Hello then, a very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock and this is Mornings with me, Kamali. Here's how we're looking. Devastation and desperation. The death toll rises. Those in Nepal fear that more floods could strike at any second.
A raging river right by it has brought utter devastation. And now what so many local people feared about a second wave of flooding coming through. You can see everyone trying to escape, trying to get to higher ground.
Rescuers are crawling through the muds in search of survivors as fears grow for the 33 missing Brits.
If I could put a message out to my parents if they could see me there, is that we're staying strong on our end. We're hopeful for your return.
Back here and batting back questions. The new Chancellor tells Sky News he can deliver on the change promised by his boss. Also today, UEFA's latest move in the battle to try and unseat FIFA's Gianni Infantino, beginning legal proceedings against him. Plus, 5 years after the United States left Afghanistan, we explore life under Taliban rule, where women have been stripped of their most basic of rights. Good morning and thank you for being with us. We're going to begin this hour in Nepal, where the scale of the destruction there is gradually being revealed as extraordinary footage shows what's left of the hardest hit areas. The death toll in Nepal is nearing 500, but that number is expected to rise significantly. Well, this footage from drones shows what's been left in the wake of the disaster. The Red Cross says that entire villages have been destroyed, with the floods swallowing bridges and roads, leaving communities cut off and in desperate need of aid. Well, for those carrying out the rescue, the terrain is unforgiving. Nepalese authorities say they don't, though, need assistance from around the world. Here, you can see footage of soldiers crawling through mud to trap hundreds of people they think are stuck within a tunnel at a hydropower plant. They say that nearly 900 people have been saved across the region yesterday. However, in just the past few moments, some rescue operations have been suspended after a lake near the China-Nepalese border overflowed. Of course, we will keep a very close eye on that. Now, Tibet, the impact is starting to be revealed too. Authorities are worried that lakes nearby, as we just said, could burst their banks. Well, here's how things stand currently. The death toll in Nepal, 469, that's according to police there. Authorities have been working to try and search for some of the 1,000 people who are still missing across both Nepal and Tibet. Of those missing, at least 540 are foreigners, 33 are said to be British. In Jiryong in Tibet, 558 people are missing, 260 people said to be foreign nationals. 3 people there have been confirmed dead. Now, one of the worst affected areas is Dunga Bazaar on the banks of the Trishuli River. From there, our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch sent us this.
Well, we were just in Dungay. That's an area where about 100 homes have been wiped out. A raging river right by it has brought utter devastation. And now what so many local people feared, concern about a second wave of flooding coming through. You can see everyone trying to escape on motorbikes, a lot trying to get to higher ground, any kind of high building that they can find. Panic set in immediately, rescue teams telling us to get out, everyone trying to flee as quick as they can.
And this is why they're so terrified. They know the horror of what can happen when a huge wall of water and mud rip through a town with no warning. The police are searching for life in Nuwakot district, but it's death that surrounds them.
This is slow, challenging work down pretty impassable roads. The police here with rescue dogs trying to move through the mud, trying to search for any survivors and some of the many dead that they believe are submerged under this mud.
Look at the struggle. And this is just a snapshot of the epic task ahead. The floodwaters rose up to 30 feet high. So fast was the torrent, so remote the location, whole families were unprepared and unable to get out.
I left my shop and ran for my life after I saw the height of the water. My friend's wife and son, both of them are gone. In my neighbourhood, there was a shop run by a couple, and they were buried too.
As night falls, frustration rises. Kern's brother Bishal is one of at least 1,400 people missing.
Even if we had a body, at least we'd have something. We don't even have that. We just want some information. How many people have died? How many people have been rescued?
It is deeply chaotic here. And now there's fear too of a second surge. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Nuwakot, Nepal.
Our reporter Neville Lazarus sent us the very latest about an hour ago.
Well, this is really tragic out here. Was one of the epicenters which they consider was the worst hit because the river is just a few meters away, and it has now taken away not only its banks, but also where there were hundreds of establishments, hundreds of homes, shops in this whole Dunga Bazaar area. It was a bustling sort of bazaar, which would have had thousands of people on that morning. There are many people who are missing out. In fact, we just spoke to one of the residents who had a shop and his home here. He said 40 members of his family, extended family, are missing. So you can imagine the scale that this town has faced. In terms of clearing up, they are trying to. Right now, there's a lunch break, so all earlier in the morning, we've seen excavators trying to push the debris and the soil from this main path, which was a road, which was the bazaar. Further down, there are the rescue workers still going through these homes, searching for bodies, and we just saw the Home Minister of the country himself come down here and overlooking the operations. They are facing a huge mounting task in terms of, and this is just a very small part of the devastation, the catastrophe that has hit Nepal, one of the poorest countries in the world, and as things are unfolding by the hour, they are looking at the kind of widespread catastrophe that has hit their country. There is still a lot of fear and anxiety amongst people. Whenever we are around, someone even shouts out that the water is rising, is that the river waters are flowing a little fast, and people just scramble to safer, higher ground. So there is a lot of fear and anxiety amongst people. People are standing all around this place, wanting to get to their homes, trying to get something from, to at least get some of their belongings, from their homes, but they can't enter it because it's very, very difficult. It's a risk to their life. But until the time the rescue workers, the excavators, etc., don't push all the soil and mud out from this place, none of them can reach their homes. A real tragedy for almost every family in this place.
Well, Neville Lazarus reporting there. Of course, we'll have more from Neville and team throughout the morning. Well, back here, the King and Queen have said they're heartbroken by news of the disaster. At least 33 Brits are missing, including 2 teenagers. Now, among those missing, Mala and Bipin Patel, who'd left from Coventry to go to Nepal on pilgrimage. Our correspondent, Shaman Freeman-Powell, has been speaking to their son, Anand.
What they were part of is a group that was going to the Gosai Kunda Lake. So that was a pilgrimage that would go through Nepal and into China, the Tibet area, to auspicious sites as part of their religious sort of beliefs. And unfortunately, they've been caught up in this landslide disaster. The last time I made contact with them was on Tuesday. They updated me on the itinerary of their trip and indicated to me that they would be looking to cross over into China the next day via the Jurong border crossing in Nepal. I knew my parents were in the area, but obviously, as more and more information emerged about where exactly this landslide occurred, more concerns sort of came about, and myself and our wider family became more and more concerned for their whereabouts. There's been a complete lack of information, understandably, given the remote location where they were based. I think what's really concerned me now is the length of time where no clear information has really emerged. When we've contacted the Foreign Office, as much as they have provided sort of support avenues, the information has been practically non-existent.
There's Anand Patel there talking about his parents missing after going on pilgrimage to Nepal. Of course, we'll have plenty more coverage on the disaster there in Nepal and Tibet throughout the day here on Sky News. On to other news now, and the new Chancellor John Healey is facing some tough decisions ahead of his first budget in late October. He's of course got the same economic challenges as his predecessor, but he needs to meet the vision of his new boss. Our deputy political editor Sam Coates travelled to Tenby to speak to Mr Healey.
What do you think of that?
Wanting to please.
Dad?
John Healey looks like another new Chancellor who's enjoying handing out the sweeties.
Boss?
Andy Burnham's new man in the Treasury in a holiday park in West Wales to highlight summer help for families, which runs out on Tuesday. Millions in savings for parents, he claims.
This Great British Summer Savings has meant for haven guests like these, they've saved over £4 million in the last couple of months.
But like so much this government can do, it's limited help, and he admits it doesn't solve everything. How much of a rosy gloss does he want to put on his economic inheritance? And most of all, this question: just how different will he really be from Rachel Reeves?
6 weeks into being Chancellor, what's your first priority in the role?
First priority for me, first duty I would say for any Chancellor is fiscal discipline. People hear Chancellors say that, but what does that mean? It's the bedrock of economic stability. And if you've got a stable economy, it means that families can manage with a bit more confidence. It means businesses can invest for the future.
But the country also heard Andy Burnham's pitch to the nation to be Prime Minister. And it looked to lots of us like there were massive, expensive plans, reforming social care, funding council house building, meeting defence commitments in full, new arrangements for companies like Thames Water. Your MPs are impatient for change. The country is waiting. How are you going to honour those pledges?
We're both determined we will stick within the fiscal rules, but we're both behind this longer-term vision of giving the country a future direction, more hope, and in the end, the heart of this is growth, good growth in every postcode. And so you've seen some of the steps that we've taken already, not just relieving and giving households or businesses just a bit of breathing space.
The biggest challenge, his boss, who got into number 10 with a massive promise of change.
We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years.
In that case, everything you've said, do you really think you're offering change? Or is it going to be initially, for the rest of this year and maybe the first part of next year, continuity, the continuity that your party rejected?
Well, this Labour government has been a government of change for the last 2 years. We now step that up with Andy Burnham as leader. We're the continuity of a Labour government with a change of leader. Looking to see growth in every postcode.
Do you agree with Andy Burnham that council tax is fundamentally unfair and we need to look again or even start again with land taxes?
Well, we're evolving council tax. We're bringing in a top band for those who have extremely valuable properties.
Is this property inspectors knocking on people's doors?
Well, some people call it a mansion tax, but this is a top rate that's not there at the moment, and it'll help make the system just a bit fairer, because at the moment you've got some people paying the same council tax in different parts of the country for hugely different properties. This is, but these sort of decisions, if they're relevant to the budget, I'll set them out in a couple of months' time.
Another one, your instinct on big profits made by banks who have high interest rates that they're profiting from, or energy companies that are making a lot because energy prices are high. Does that feel like good growth to you, or do you think the proceeds of that growth might be shared out better?
Well, I think you're tempting me to speculate on the budget. You know, I'll set out any decisions that I have in 2 months' time. Before that, I'm not going to respond to speculation, because that only fuels more speculation.
What a contrast between the man I've just spoken to and his new boss next door in Downing Street. Of course, it's the job of the new Chancellor to temper any fears that Andy Burnham might be a spendaholic, but will they make good neighbours in the long term?
So have you managed to move into the number 10 flat, number 11 flat?
About a week ago, after we had a week's holiday.
What's it like living above the shop?
It's massive. It's meant to be the small flat. We haven't got enough furniture for it. But I got my dartboard up.
To win, this Chancellor needs to keep batting back the spending request while outwitting his opponents. It's going to be a tough ask. Sam Coates, Sky News, 10B in West Wales.
I just want to bring you another update that we've had come into us from Nepal. It's now being reported that following news that a lake has burst its banks, helicopter operations in Rasua have been paused for at least an hour and a half. Locals have been seen rushing up the hill to higher grounds. There are fears that a lake may well inundate the area with the water that's lodged in it following, of course, that glacial collapse a couple of days ago. So rescue efforts have been stopped in the area of Rasua, helicopter operations at least, for an hour and a half while they monitor the situation. We'll bring you the very, very latest on that as soon as we get it here on Sky News. You can see Amanda's joined us. Amanda, morning again to you. So look, John Healey there and Sam Coates going back and forth on what may well be in this October the 28th budget. What did you make of what Mr Healey actually had to say about his plan?
I think it really summed up for me the tension at the heart of the Burnham project here, because, as Sam pointed out in his report there, Andy Burnham came into office promising real change, the circuit breaker with big pledges that sound very expensive, reforming social care, building lots of social housing, funding defence fully, but promising at the same time to stick within the manifesto promises. And then you have John Healey asked what his top priority as Chancellor is, and he says fiscal discipline, talks about that being the bedrock of government. And frankly, if you closed your eyes and just read what he had to say, you could think it was Rachel Reeves talking, because it was exactly the same messaging we've heard from her over and over again over the past 2 years. And I think you could almost potentially hear the sound of her and Keir Starmer grinding their teeth there when asked whether he had shifted his view on defence spending, and he said no. But at the same time, there didn't seem to be a real sense that he's going to somehow find the money to get to 3% of defence spending. The issue that he resigned over as Defence Secretary earlier on this summer, which of course precipitated really the collapse of the Starmer project in the end, because he was so critical about that. So everyone assumed when he became Chancellor under Andy Burnham that they would really make that a big priority. Perhaps they will, but certainly at the moment, as all Chancellors do, he doesn't want to make any firm commitments as to what he's planning.
We'll find out in a month or two. Amanda, for now, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, cowboy builders are set to come under further scrutiny from today under a new plan to help people hire trustworthy builders and get rid of those who rip people off. Our correspondent Amelia Harper has joined us. She's been covering this story closely. Morning to you, Amelia. We're going to be speaking to the Minister in a moment. Why don't you just give us sort of an idea as to what the government have laid out to start with?
Yeah, so I suppose we had this information at 10:30 last night, and having a read of it, I'm interested to understand, I suppose, the deeper details here. So what they have outlined is essentially a new government-supported scheme to help people like you and I identify a trader that we could hire with confidence, they say. And what will happen is businesses, so traders, will have to sign up to this approved code. So what this approved code they're saying is going to involve will mean traders demonstrating they can meet 3 things. So higher standards of customer service, 2, transparency, and 3, dispute resolution. And what they're also saying is there'll be this new system to protect people's money by essentially having payments, directly linked to building milestones. But I think what I want to know is some of the details here. Kamali.
Let's find some of that stuff out there. And we can speak to the Labour MP, Kate Dearden, who joins us now live. Kate Dearden, good morning to you. Thank you very much for making the time to speak to us today. As you've heard, Amelia has done lots of reporting on this, so she'll be speaking to you in a moment as well. But why don't you, first of all, just lay out for us why the government thinks this is an important thing to do?
Morning. Great to be with you. I'm really pleased to be speaking to you about this announcement today of we're stepping in to protect families from cowboy builders and from aggressive bailiffs. So on cowboy builders, I've heard from lots of people all across the country just what a nightmare this can be. You know, you might have saved up your whole life for improvements on your house and your home. And then sometimes the work might not even start, but you've paid a significant upfront fee to work stopping halfway through. I've heard from one woman, she spent £170,000, so a significant amount of money, and her house, in terms of her renovations, was stopped halfway through. It was left in an unsafe condition, and she's still fighting for that money and to get it back. So the announcement we're making today is significant because it's in an industry-led initiative, but it's making sure that for payments in particular, that there's a trusted payments app that's launching next week, and I've got it on my phone so I can show you. It's making sure that there are clear milestones to reach before money's released. So a real clear agreement with someone that you trust, with your life savings, with such a significant thing to do in terms of that home improvement, as well as an approved code that's been led by the Furniture and Home Improvement Ombudsman. So that's making sure that we have a clear list of reputable builders, you know, someone that you can trust with that project that signs up to this code, so that we can include dispute resolution as part of it too. So it's a really important announcement because consumer detriment in this sector in 2024 reached £10.3 billion. That's a significant amount of money that people are losing. And as I said, what a significant event it is. So having this announcement, the app launching next week and the code over the coming months, will provide that support to people, because particularly for that woman, you know, she was maybe able to access this app that we're launching next week. That's a government-backed, industry-led initiative, and she had those clear milestones. Maybe that wouldn't have happened to her. So that's why today is so significant for consumers and why we're backing them.
I've got the first question. I think what I want to understand is, why is this optional? Why is it optional to have builders meet a good standard?
We wanted to act quickly. We wanted to make sure that, in light of what I've just said, that consumer detriment, a significant cost to people, that we can get something in place as soon as possible to support people. So yes, this is voluntary at the moment. We'll be watching closely about the progress, and we won't hesitate to go further if we need to. Obviously, including a mandatory scheme would take a lot more time for us to develop and to build. So that's why at the moment it is voluntary, and we're really encouraging obviously as many people to get involved and to sign up, and working with industry to do that. But if we obviously made it a mandatory, it might not be able to announce it today and to get this app up and running next week. So we are working across the consumer protection space as well in terms of longer term around consumer enforcement. So this is part of building into that work of how we make sure that we get money back into people's pockets, that they're not ripped off on everyday issues and everyday costs, but especially for this sector, for such a big, significant spending for lots of people across the country, that we get that support to them as soon as possible, and soon as next week.
I suppose one of the questions is that repeat offenders, people know how to game the system at the moment. None of this announcement actually tackles people who repeatedly take on building projects and then continue to leave homeowners with sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage. What of today's announcement actually goes towards tackling that?
And you're right to raise this. A lot of the announcements today are obviously introducing next week for people who are looking for that work. And in the longer term, we want to make sure that we are looking at the consumer enforcement landscape as a whole. So looking at really important organisations like Citizens Advice and trading standards in particular. So for people who have unfortunately been a victim of a rogue builder, often go to Citizens Advice for that initial advice.
If I just jump in here, because
these dodgy builders.
If I just jump in here, because part of my investigation looked into Citizens Advice, the process by which homeowners can actually report their complaints and concerns. I found a complete postcode lottery. Some areas in the country had less than one full-time equivalent trading standards officer to actually look into this. My takeaway, if I may, on this announcement is that it tackles one part of the problem. You're kind of looking at the source problem, but what happens about dispute resolution? What happens at that end of things when things actually do go wrong? Because I've had so many conversations with homeowners who have said, my building work's gone wrong. I have reported it to Citizens Advice, to Action Fraud, to the police, and nothing's happened. So what are we doing to tackle that side of things?
Completely, and I've had similar conversations with people around their situation, as I've mentioned, and that's why we want to look at the consumer enforcement landscape as a whole, so for the longer term, and that includes this sector, but many more too that consumers face detriment in. So particularly for trading standards, they've had significant cuts since 2010 under the previous government. We want to get the support to them. They're absolutely brilliant teams, and as you said, it's quite consistent across the country in terms of the resources that are available. So we support trading standards in my department, but also across government, particularly the Home Office, MOJ. We're really conscious of the work they do and the resources in light of those cuts that we've seen since 2010. But particularly for Citizens Advice too, how we can get more resource support to them. This supports people every single day on so many issues.
But I suppose with this
in the longer term, and we'll obviously be working at pace as we have been since we got into government on this, because we recognise what you're saying. Absolutely.
With today's announcement, with this approved code, what is missing from this is the actual tangible measurement, the milestones that a builder will actually have to hit. So what are the tangible measurements that builders will have to hit? And my second question related to that is this payment scheme. So you have said that you want to create a system that protects homeowners' money by linking payments to key project milestones. Who's marking that? If the builders are saying, we're going to hit these milestones, we have hit this milestone, they're marking their own homework. So are you going to get in a team of independent inspectors? That will cost money. What about the key details here?
Show the app if it might be helpful, just so you can see the breakdown of the payments and kind of how it will look for people next week. And you can see those key milestones and how they're marked by, because built into the system will be that ADR, and it's a support, and you can get that advice immediately on the app. So if I just show you on my phone, maybe you can't see it because it's quite light.
It's very bright.
I will read it out to you. So it says here, so for example, I've put here that I want a basement conversion. Total budget, £70,000. And the start date, as in today, and the end date on the 9th of January. So it says on the 27th of August, I've got a retention payment of £7,000. 10% of my project funds are held in the escrow by the Ombudsman and are only released when I'm happy with the final result. The next step is on the 9th of September, and that's the project setup. That's an additional £7,000. And then it moves on to other dates in the run-up to January: planning and design, excavation and tanking, structure and drainage, first fix, plastering and flooring, second fix, and so on until we get to the work completion. And as part of that, there's a real support system built into the app as well. If people need advice, if something's not going right, and it's an agreement between them and the builder.
We don't have loads of time left, and look, you've got the app there, but I think the point that Amelia is making is, and you have sort of alluded to in many of your answers, is that there is more to come on this. There's legislation that can actually really enforce this with sort of hard legal consequences if a builder lets down a homeowner. You've signalled this, the Prime Minister's writing in the Daily Mail about this, but why not wait until the policy's properly in place so you can really protect those homeowners?
Because we're absolutely acting with that urgency. We want to get support to people next week, and that's what this app will do. We want to get that code in, but it will kick off next month, be fully in place by the end of the year. As I said, we'll be reviewing this policy really, really closely, the impact it will have, the take-up, to make sure that absolutely it is protecting people in this space, protecting them against cowboy builders so they're not ripped off. Their lifetime savings that they've worked so hard for, they've saved this significant event, that they're not ripped off by someone who they can't trust with the home. So that's why we're acting with this urgency, back in this industry-led scheme that's launching next week. But this is no means the end. We want to work really closely with consumers, with industry of all sorts, across the consumer protection landscape, trading standards, citizens advice, and so many more organisations to make sure that in the longer term, we've got a consumer enforcement space that works, it's on the side of working people and their hard work and money.
OK, Kate Deard, an MP for Minister for Consumer Protection. Really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much for that. Look, Amelia, you put many questions to Ms Deard. Quickly, what did you make of her response?
Interesting. I think I still have outstanding questions, particularly penalty. What is the penalty if builders fail to comply? There has to be a consequence if this is going to work.
We'll talk about it more in the next hour. I really appreciate you being here for that. Thank you for now. Now, stay with us here on Mornings, because coming up next, we're going to look at the situation facing Gianni Infantino as UEFA look to bring criminal proceedings against him. Let's return now to Nepal and Tibet and our top story this hour, and that's news that's just come into us from Nepal, where rescue operations have stopped. People have been seen fleeing, trying to get to higher ground as there is fear of another flash flood. Now, the number of people killed by the devastation on the border with Tibet has risen to nearly 500. This morning, we have heard that a lake has burst its banks, raising the fear again that areas are about to be inundated yet again with water. Now, the Red Cross says entire villages have been completely destroyed. However, Nepalese authorities say that they don't need assistance from other nations at this stage. Now, in Tibet, the Jiryong region, 558 people are said to be missing. It's thought 260 of those are foreign nationals. 3 people there have so far been confirmed to have lost their lives. Of course, we'll have more from Nepal and Tibet throughout the morning. Now, this weekend, it will be 5 years since the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. Since then, the Taliban have retaken control, doing everything they can to erase women and girls from public life. From education to healthcare, women have been living without some of their most basic rights, and things are only getting worse. Well, let's just take you through again how the Taliban were able to return to power. In February of 2020, they signed a peace agreement with the then Trump administration. The US agreed to withdraw all troops within 14 months. By June, the US had reduced its numbers from 13,000 to 8,600. By the following January, only 3,500 were still in country. Now, a few months later, Joe Biden confirmed all troops would leave by the end of August of that year. The Taliban then rapidly took control of dozens of districts, and by mid-August, the Afghan central government had collapsed and the president was forced to flee. The Taliban had captured nearly all of the nation, including the capital, Kabul. The last of those US troops left on the 30th of August, just minutes before the deadline that had been set. Now, since then, the Taliban have succeeded in creating a health crisis, especially for women. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, has this.
We've spent 3 weeks travelling around Afghanistan talking to ordinary people living under Taliban rules. The Taliban are building roads and routes to remote areas. Afghanistan's a country of staggering natural beauty, and after decades of war, there's much better security. Most of the poppy fields, which produced much of the world's heroin, have been replaced by other crops. But the Taliban's edicts have also changed every aspect of an Afghan woman's life, stripping them of the right to decide what to wear, banning them from most work and excluding them from public spaces. The UN calls it gender apartheid. That's having a knock-on effect, particularly on female healthcare. Many women in the villages won't even talk to a man they're not related to, never mind seek medical help from one. The women tell me they have to do what their husbands decide. If he won't allow me to see a male doctor and there's no female doctor, I have to stay at home, she tells me. The woman next to her says they all worry about dying in childbirth or their babies not surviving.
Have you lost any babies?
5 children. Yeah.
You lost 5 children giving birth?
Yeah. One of them was a boy and one girls.
Gynecologists like Dr. Roshannon Wardak are increasingly rare. She warns the ban on female education is disastrous.
If there is no doctor, no nurse, no midwife, who will help them? The men? Their family will not allow the ladies to go and deliver their babies with a man doctor.
So what do you expect will happen?
Catastrophe.
And we will have Alex's full reports in the next hour of the programme, and we're going to be speaking to Alex about her reporting later on this morning, so stay with us for all of that. But now, though, let's take a look at the weather forecast.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, it's a bank holiday, so the weather will be unsettled. Thunderstorms could bring some more localised flooding, but forecasters aren't clear exactly when and where. Showers are going to develop quite widely this morning. Some will be heavy and prolonged, bringing the risk, as we say, of hail and thunder, but expect bright and sunny spells too. The rain will be concentrated over northern England and Wales, more isolated elsewhere, with many northwestern and southeastern parts staying fine.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Now, UEFA, a European football's governing body, is preparing, it says, to bring criminal proceedings against the boss of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, over his failed plan to sell off parts of the World Cup. I'm very pleased to say we can bring in our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, who's in Monaco, where UEFA are meeting. Rob, morning to you. You guys have been leading the way on the reporting around all of this. What's the latest here on this news that filings have been made by UEFA to try and get documents about the FIFA plan?
Well, this is a serious intensifying of the pressure being put on Gianni Infantino by UEFA. They're not just getting him to withdraw the plan, which they did to try to sell shares in the World Cup. This is about holding Infantino to account, and there could now be serious legal consequences for him because I obtained legal documents filed in the United States, in Florida, New York and Colorado, which show UEFA is requesting all the evidence that was held relating to the talks around this venture that Infantino tried to launch, having negotiated it in secret for so many months before blindsiding the world of football just a month or so ago with his attempts to privatise the World Cup. Now, UEFA is seeking information from FIFA, which has a legal HQ in Miami, also from the financial institutions involved in trying to raise the money for this venture. And the legal document talks about being a fraudulently low price, the $20 billion valuation for this World Cup venture. It might seem a lot of money, but the most recent World Cup is said by FIFA to have generated around $15 billion alone. And the sense was to try to raise $4.2 billion from the private investors, so selling off about 20% of the World Cup. And the documents I've seen show that UEFA is accusing Gianni Infantino of potential criminal mismanagement, and they are pursuing potentially launching criminal proceedings in Switzerland. Now, FIFA and the associated parties, who are called conspirators in the legal documents, could try to claim this is a fishing expedition to try to gain documents, messages, exchanges that took place, within a view, though, from UEFA to try to launch this action. Now, UEFA could have to establish that there has been damage to the detriment of FIFA caused by Infantino secretly trying to land this plan on the members around the world. But it also talks about how Infantino was trying to offer a financial inducement to the football associations to rapidly accept this plan. They were being offered potentially $80 million over 12 years, but they had to agree with it within weeks. Of course, it was then abandoned a few weeks ago, given the escalating backlash and outrage, and after one of Infantino's own senior advisors resigned in a statement to me, calling it a bad deal. So all of this situation has now moved well beyond pure football, because UEFA is trying to ensure there is legal consequence for Gianni Infantino, all as they try to force his departure. The election at FIFA coming up next March. There are many who are trying to push for his resignation far sooner than then, with crisis talks still going on here in Monaco as UEFA launches the season, as football is engulfed in an escalating civil war.
Yes, all right, Rob, more from you and team later on. Thanks very much for that. I stick with a sporting theme and to boxing, and Moses Atoma is a name you may not yet be familiar with, but keep it in mind, as at 21, he's already been compared to Mike Tyson. If he beats the Croatian Filip Hrgović this weekend, he'll become Britain's youngest ever heavyweight champion. In fact, Britain's youngest ever champion of the world at any weight. Prince Nassim was the last champion of the world at featherweight back in the 90s. Now, Moses Atoma sat down with our sports presenter, Jackie Beltrao, who started by asking if he's ready.
I'm still trying to find my way on how to solve like this spotlight kind of thing, because even like to this day, like I said it a couple times, I don't consider myself a celebrity, or I don't consider myself famous. I just believe like I'm a well-known person. I guess I need to start embracing what I am. I'll have to find a way.
There's a lot of hype around you though within boxing. How do you shut out all of that noise and not get carried away with the hype? It's just noise. Like you just said it yourself. Like, how do you shut out the noise? You just wherever or however you come in contact with that noise, you just shut it out. I just think it's a quick solution to just
get off social media. So it's not something that you deal with, but you kind of let it deal with you, if that makes sense, and then just kind of adapt on the way there. So it's like boxing is just something I've done for such a long time, but the media is all new. So I'm just trying to navigate my way through.
Do much social media?
Yeah, I have social media, but I don't really engage with it. Like, if somebody might post something, I won't see it for another like 3-4 days later. You know, being that type of person that's like off social media, obviously not completely, but being off social media, I start to realize that a lot of people's like, their whole lives are based on that, and it's like, it's not real.
Now, Filip Hrgović is a tough opponent. It's a tough fight for both of you. How are you going to navigate it?
I mean, if I had the answer, I'd be a bag of confidence, wouldn't I? So,
are you not a bag of confidence?
Do you not think? Do you not think I come across quite relaxed and calm?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have the Hrgović, I have the Hrgović puzzle solved, I think.
Are you prepared to get punched? Because not many of your opponents get that near you.
That's an interesting question. I've never been asked that. I'll be interested to see how I handle if that problem was to ever occur. But I wouldn't say I'm prepared to get punched. I'm definitely prepared to get out of the way. Just I don't know if I'm prepared to get punched.
Are you prepared to go long? Do you have the stamina if this turns into a long fight? Because your fights generally are not long.
The thing is, like, I'd probably want to invest into certain tactics in the ring early. It's all tactics in it, but I can't give away too much.
You'll be Britain's youngest heavyweight world champion. If you were to win, you'd be the second youngest of all time behind Mike Tyson. Do you think there are some similarities between you and Mike Tyson?
I'll probably say he's more explosive. I think he's probably more, he fights off emotions. He's less thinking, but more instinctive. And I believe I'm the opposite. Compared to the world champions and the people that are up there, like, I'm still kind of, not a boy, but I'm not as mature as them, like, physically. So I'm gonna have to beat them mentally. You
have sparred with Tyson Fury. He said he wouldn't fight you because you're a kid. Would you like to fight him at some point? Probably not. Like, Tyson Fury, like, obviously I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but his best years are behind him, and like it wouldn't be respectful for me to say I'd want to fight a lesser version of him. If we was both in our primes, like that's obviously something to talk about, to compensate. But like I'm on a trajectory up, and he's obviously got that fight with Anthony Joshua, and like obviously God knows what's going to happen after that. So I wouldn't say I'd want to fight him, no. And I don't think he would want to fight me either. If that fight ever makes it into the ring, who wins that, do you think? The fans, because they finally get to see it. You're going to get a political answer from me. I don't know, I like both Tyson and AJ. Like, I've picked their brains on like a lot of things. I just want to see the fight happen and may the best man win. What happens on Saturday? Like, in your mind, you must have visualised it. It's an opportunity to be world champion. I can become a world champion and I'll get a burger and a milkshake. I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that question, to be honest.
Breaking news to bring you now, coming to us out of Oslo, and it has been announced that King Harald V, the King of Norway, has died. He was receiving treatment in hospital for at least 10 days for a rare blood condition, and it has now been announced in the past few minutes that the 89-year-old has succumbed to his illness. He was the oldest head of state in Europe, having taken the throne in 1991. His son, the successor Crown Prince Haakon, has actually been serving as a regent while his father was receiving treatment. This news coming to us out of Oslo, that the age of 89, King Harald, Europe's longest serving head of state, has died. We'll have more detail, of course, from Oslo throughout the morning to get more information about King Harald V. And Let's bring in our paper reviewer, Matthew Stadlin. Matthew, just a quick thought there from you, if you can, about that news of King Harold's death.
Yes, sad news, and as you say, he was, until today, the oldest of Europe's heads of state, I think. So a significant achievement there. 35 years, I think, on the throne. I have to admit, not being an expert on the Norwegian monarchy, but a sad day, obviously, for Norwegians.
Indeed, and as we said, we'll have more detail out of Oslo throughout the morning. Flags have now been moved to half-staff in honour of King Harold, and as I say, we'll get reporting out there, I'm sure, throughout the morning. Let's move on to the papers, Matthew, since that's why you are here with us, and we're going to start this hour with reporting out of Middlesbrough, the story that's in many of the newspapers, and there's going to be a surge in police presence in and around Middlesbrough following the incidents over the past week or so.
I know you've been struck by parts of this article, and it is shocking, but I think it's partly shocking because our focus hasn't been, as it should have been, on some of our northern heartlands. And it's something that I hope that Andy Burnham relocating Number 10, at least in part, to the north or to part of the north in the shape of Manchester might change, that there might be a greater focus on parts of the north. Because if the sort of carnage that we've been hearing about in Middlesbrough and residents living in fear of gangland feuds spilling out beyond the gangs, if that had been taking place in the southeast, I believe we would have known a lot more about this a lot more quickly. I remember a friend who had a boyfriend up in the northeast, not far from there, just talking about the deprivation that she saw when she went to stay with him. It's very difficult for us as journalists to get a sense of what's really going on beyond the headlines if we haven't been there ourselves recently. And we do have a press, I think, in this country that is very much focused and based down here. The BBC, of course, moved to Manchester for parts of their operations fairly in the not too distant past, and that makes a difference. But I think there is still a focus on the south, and so this story, terrible as it is, I hope begins to reorientate.
Yeah, there definitely is still that focus, and it's funny, isn't it? Because we've known that there's been that focus forever, and yet still it remains. And the stat, as you mentioned, that did really jump out to me from this reporting is that over the past year, people in Teesside have faced the highest risk of being murdered, with 21.7 homicides per million people. That's the highest among police force areas in the year 25 to 26.
Yeah, and they're shocking pictures. I think on the front page of the Telegraph this morning, there's a picture of armed police in the area, and this follows the death of 2 people in a house fire, including a 7-year-old girl very recently, and that in itself, of course, followed the deaths of 7, including those 2 police officers just a few days ago. So shocking scenes, and I hope, actually, that this isn't a story that just disappears. Obviously, we want things to be resolved in Middlesbrough, but that the focus doesn't just move on and then Middlesbrough gets relatively forgotten about. And it won't just be Middlesbrough, by the way, facing these sorts of problems. It'll be other towns and cities around the country.
It definitely will. Let's move on to this. Judging by the font, I think that's the Mail, this reporting here. Some anger from Pakistan about a piece that was on Sky Sports.
Yes, I was at Lord's yesterday with my 3-year-old, his 13th Test match, almost certainly a world record, yeah. The more he goes, the less he enjoys it, sadly, I think. But I was not aware at the time that there was this threat that Pakistan might actually not return to the field. If Sky Sports went ahead and broadcast an interview with the two sons of Imran Khan, in which they alleged that the Pakistan state is trying to kill him. I am deeply concerned about Imran Khan's welfare. He's in prison in Pakistan, having been convicted of corruption charges, questions over the legitimacy of those charges. I don't know the details. The Pakistani government says there's nothing to see here, he's being treated perfectly well. But this is a man that I grew up watching. He was the captain of Pakistan when they beat England in the World Cup final. I think it was in 1992. I remember that vividly. Of course, a massive England fan, but he was a hero there. He much later became Prime Minister. And it's really shocking that someone that so many of us are familiar with seems to be, according to his family anyway, really, really struggling in prison. Lost a lot of the sight in one of his eyes. And the Supreme Court ruled that he had to be taken to a private hospital. He then wasn't taken to the private hospital, taken to a government hospital. Yes. So I would like Ed Miliband, our Foreign Secretary, this is certainly what his sons are calling for, to really look further into this case and to apply some diplomatic pressure on Pakistan, because there are fears that he is effectively a political prisoner. Again, the Pakistani government deny that.
Indeed. Let's move on to this being reported in The Guardian. To take us through the reporting here, if you can. This is about political donations.
Yeah, this is fascinating because there's some emails which say that Andy Burnham, not very long ago indeed, I think earlier this year, was backing a cap on domestic donations to political parties. Mm-hmm. We know that the Labour government wants to introduce a cap on donations from abroad, and that's very important because we don't want foreign interference in our politics. But there are big questions about the extent to which donors in this country hold sway over our politicians. And there is a suggestion that now Burnham is effectively backtracking because he's not, at least in the short term, backing a cap on domestic donations.
OK, Matthew, for now, thank you so much for that. We're going to return to our breaking news that we just brought you, the news out of the Norwegian capital, Oslo, that the Norwegian King Harald V, has died at the age of 89. He had been receiving treatment in hospital for a bacterial infection in his blood. It wasn't the first time that he had been hospitalised in recent years. He was also hospitalised back in 2024. At the age of 89, he was the oldest and longest-serving monarch in Europe, having passed away. This morning, it's been announced by the royal household in Oslo. Flags have now been set to half-mast as Norway enters a period of mourning for the passing of King Harald. A statement put out by the Norwegian royal family about this says that King Harald passed away peacefully at Oslo University Hospital on Friday, the 28th of August at 6:35 local time. That is all that we've heard so far from the Norwegian royal family. He had been, as we say, in hospital being treated for a blood bacterial infection in his blood. The Crown Prince, his son, had been serving as regent in King Harald's stead while he was receiving treatment. Crown Prince Haakon, who is 53, is successor to the throne and will now take the throne with the passing of King Harald. So that treatment has continued, and of course Oslo will and the rest of Norway enter a period of mourning for the passing of King Harald. Our royal expert Alistair Bruce will join us in the next hour with reflections on the king.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello and good morning. It is 8 o'clock and this is Mornings with me at Kamali Melbourne. Here are our headlines. Devastation and desperation. Fears of more flooding in Nepal and Tibet as a lake bursts its banks and the death toll continues to rise.
The raging river right by it has brought utter devastation. And now what so many local people feared about a second wave of flooding coming through. You can see everyone trying to escape, trying to get to higher ground.
Rescuers crawl through mud in the search for survivors as fears grow for the 33 missing Brits.
If I could put a message out to my parents if they could see me there, is that we're staying strong on our end. We're hopeful for your return.
Breaking news from Oslo. The King of Norway, King Harald, has died at the age of 89. We'll have all the reaction to his passing. Also ahead this hour, UEFA's latest move in its battle to try and unseat the FIFA boss Gianni Infantino. They've begun legal proceedings against him. Plus, 5 years after the United States left Afghanistan, we explore life under Taliban rule, where women have been stripped of their most basic of rights. Hello, good morning, and thank you for being with us. We begin with the devastation in Nepal and Tibet, where this morning rescue operations have been suspended and locals are said to be rushing to higher ground over fear there could be more flooding to come. Authorities say a dammed lake on the border in Tibet has burst its banks. The death toll in Nepal is now nearing 500, but that number is expected to rise significantly. Well, the scale of the destruction is gradually being uncovered as extraordinary footage reveals what's been left of the hardest hit zones. The Red Cross says entire villages have been destroyed, with the floods swallowing bridges and roads, leaving communities cut off and in need of aid. Well, for rescuers, the terrain is unforgiving. Nepalese authorities, though, are saying at this stage they don't need help from the outside world. You can see here soldiers crawling through mud to rescue what they think were hundreds of people trapped within a hydropower plant. There were among 900 people who were rescued across the region yesterday. And neighbouring Tibet, the impact of the flood there is starting to become clear. Along with the alert that dam has been breached, there is a warning to locals and rescuers to find safe higher ground if they can. Well, here's how it stands currently. The death toll in Nepal has risen to 469. Authorities are working around the clock in search of some of the 1,000 or so people who remain missing across both Nepal and Tibet. Of those missing, at least 540 are foreigners, 33 are said to be Briton. In Jilong in Tibet, 558 people are missing, thought to be 260 foreign nationals. Among those, 3 people have been confirmed to have died. Of course, we'll have more on the situation in Nepal and Tibet, but let's go back to that breaking news that came in the last half an hour, that King Harald V of Norway has died at the age of 89. He was Europe's oldest living monarch, was taken to hospital last week where he was being treated for a bacterial infection in his blood. Well, let's bring in our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce. Alistair, a good morning to you. Your reflections on the news of King Harald's passing.
Well, it's immensely sad for Norway. He's been the most stable and steady sovereign for that nation since he came to the throne in 1991. There was a great affection for him, which we saw played out over the last few days as people gathered in front of the royal palace in Oslo. And I think for King Harald, who has had at his side, and right to the point of his death, the love of his life, Queen Sonia, he provided for the nation the great stability it needed through quite a lot of changes and challenges and political movement. And I think that for him, he has always continued that tradition that he inherited from his father, King Olaf, who guided the nation through all the elements after the Second World War, and his grandfather, King Haakon, who came to the throne when Norway chose to be a monarchy in 1905. So he's the third of the line who have served Norway. And he has always been very, very dedicated to the work that he did. And he will be greatly missed because as a constitutional monarch, he has been the absolute template.
We saw there pictures of King Harold with the late Queen Elizabeth. How was he received around Europe in other European courts?
Well, of course, he was very close to Elizabeth II and indeed to our king because they are relations. King Harold's grandmother was Princess Maud of the United Kingdom, the daughter of Edward VII. There were great links. King Harold was here regularly. He was a mad, keen fisherman and was often in Scotland. And so he was probably over in the United Kingdom 3 or 4 times a year. So there was great links there. I think in the family of monarchs and of heads of state of Europe, he was very well known. He had a great sense of humor. He was very pragmatic and he could always see the funny thing in things. A friend of mine who went fishing with him arrived at an airport in Scotland and the driver came up to King Harold and said, "Are you the King of Norway?" And he said, "No," pointing at his friend who'd come with. He said, "He is." So he had a sort of sense of humor always with him. And I think that it was his steadiness, his humor, and his determination to uphold the Constitution that made him the effective ruler that he was. And he's prepared his son, Haakon, who has been acting as regent, who is now King of Norway, and he will probably be King Haakon the Eighth. And that will all be announced in the process of these things when he has held his extraordinary Council of State later today.
And that is the process. Actually, on that joke, Alistair, I feel like I remember you telling me a similar joke that the Queen had delivered about one time when she was approached by a member of the public in Scotland, pretending it wasn't actually her. So the royals can make us laugh from time to time. You talk about the process then. Crown Prince Haakon will take the throne. What is the process in the Norwegian royal family for the change of head of state?
Well, the moment the king died, King Harold died, then Haakon became king. And he would have ensured that the Parliament and that the Prime Minister and everybody else had been informed of the death of the former king, and then immediately needs to hold an extraordinary Council of State where he will formally declare that his father, King Harold, has died and that he is now king and that he has taken command of government. Now, I know that sounds quite serious, but he is, of course, a constitutional monarch, and constitutionally, it is a democracy. So, but he holds the levers now of government. He has actually been acting as regent for some time because his father was so ill, but it will be a matter of time. There's no coronation in Norway. In due course, he will go to Trondheim Cathedral, where he will be, as it were, confirmed into his role in the traditional place where, going back through history, Norwegian kings had been crowned. So it is a process, but today, for the new king and for the Queen Sonia, who was married to King Harold, it's a very, very sad day, and our thoughts are with them. And that for all the Norwegian royal family, they have been gathering at the hospital. They've been with the king, and I dare say most of them were with him at the moment he died.
Alistair, you said that Norway chose to become a monarchy in 1905. Give us the history of that in the Norwegian state and why it took that path all that time ago.
Well, Norway was part of Sweden, and there was a movement to create an independence for Norway. And when they chose to become independent at the beginning of the 20th century, they wanted to have a king, and there was some bargaining as to who would be acceptable to all the other monarchies of Europe. And in the end, it was one of the Danish princes, and he was persuaded to leave Denmark and go to become the king. But he wouldn't accept to do that until there had been a vote in Norway to prove that that was what they want. The Norwegians went to the ballot and they said they wanted to become a monarchy in 1905. And so the Prince of Denmark sailed into Oslo and was created King Haakon VII. And of course, his wife was Maud. She was an English princess who he had married. I think that neither of them had had any plans of taking on anything quite so extraordinary. So it was a great change of life. And I think partly that's why the Norwegians have taken to this Danish family that came and volunteered to be their monarchs and have guided them through so much. Now, King Harald, who's just died, as a young boy, he was born in 1937, was part of the great challenge faced by King Haakon of all having to escape Oslo when Nazi Germany attacked Norway in 1940. And indeed, he went with his mother over the hill with his two sisters, and they arrived at the border of Sweden, where they were held. It was very difficult for Sweden. Sweden refused to let them in. So as a little boy, he was part of this challenge that Norway faced during the Second World War, which was pretty much existential. And of course, he lived most of his time in America during the war with his mother while the war carried on. And he was back in 1940 as a young boy waving the Norwegian flag. And he's been waving that Norwegian flag right up to the day he died, which we now mark today.
It's incredible history, and incredible as well that people would vote to install a monarchy back in 1905. Just tells you sort of how long ago that was, maybe in people's minds. Mention it again, if you can, Alistair, King Harold's connections with the UK and the family connection with our royal family.
So King Edward VII was king in the United Kingdom as the son of Queen Victoria from 1901 to 1910. He had a number of daughters, one of whom was Maud, and she married what appeared to be a rather unimportant Danish prince. And that prince was then invited by Norway to become its king, as I say, in 1905. So there are very strong links, and King Harold was one of the descendants of Queen Victoria. So I think the links were very great, and particularly going back to the Second World War, because it was the anvil on which Norway was truly tested, and the sheer courage of the Norwegians who had to deal with the terrifying leader Quisling, who gave a new word to the English language. And King Haakon VII, the late king who's just died's grandfather, operated in London in exile, and so did the government. And Norwegians were incredibly brave at trying to defend their nation against Nazi Germany and the expulsion of Jews to death camps and everything like that, that weighed very heavily on the Norwegians. But the courage of the Norwegians in defending was very much bound up in Haakon VII. And I think that this new king, whose grandson has now just died, created exactly what Norway wanted in creating its own new identity as a nation, created a figurehead around which all could gather. And now that nation will look to King Harald's son, Haakon, who is the King of Norway now.
Talk to us about the royal family in Norway at the moment and how they are seen by the Norwegian population. There have been headlines in recent years, criminal cases, a member of the royal family or a son of the crown princess, who's not a member of the royal family, sent to prison, and other controversies. What is the current sort of status of the royals among Norwegians, in your understanding?
It's not an easy situation for the new King of Norway. His wife, Mette-Marit, who will probably become Queen of Norway, he married after she had been previously married and had had a son. That son has been in some difficulty. He was accused, taken to courts and put under, he's basically been found guilty. And so that has created a real difficulty. But also Mette-Marit admitted to being connected to Jeffrey Epstein. These are difficulties that don't directly fall upon the new King of Norway, but they are present. And the Norwegians, they're an evolving nation, and it'll be up to the new king to, as it were, fulfill his father's capacity to earn the respect of Norway, and it'll be down to the new king to do the same. I sense that there's no move at the moment to turn Norway into being a republic, but all things can change, and it's a democratic nation. And I know that King Haakon will take very seriously the responsibility that he has to answer for the requirements and needs of his nation. But he's had in his late father, King Harald V, a tremendous guide And he's been very close to his father, particularly we saw in the last days where, in fact, last night, he didn't leave the side of the hospital bed of his father. So, you know, he must have been present at the moment that his father was gathered and at the moment that he became king. It's a challenge for them. The new king's sister, she was also involved in difficulties. She'd been married recently, and not everybody in Norway was content or happy. It's caused great difficulties. There have been arguments. But, you know, families are complicated places. And I think what is key here is, can the new king meet the requirements of Norway at a challenging time? And I sense that Haakon has all the capacity from learning from his father, King Harald V, to do exactly that.
As finally then, King Haakon now has taken the throne, there will, I imagine, be a period of mourning and then a state funeral for King Harald.
Yes, and they do that very beautifully in Norway. And in due course, that will be announced. It's generally about 13 days after the death of the monarch. And it will be a procession through Oslo to the principal church and then down to the burial place, which is in the castle at the water's edge. And it is, of course, there where so much of what was significant in the Second World War took place, and it's where the other kings lie at rest. And then there will be the inauguration of the new king at Trondheim Cathedral. But the mourning period will be announced. And I'm sure that in the United Kingdom, the king will want to mark with mourning within the court and the royal family. And probably we will see that the household division, which are the guards division, will wear black armbands. But beyond that, the United Kingdom only showing that loyalty and family link to a nation that is one of the European monarchies. So it will be marked. But, you know, for Norway, this is, it's a sad day. But at 89, King Harald V, who had suffered a great deal of ill health, has been gathered. And it is the end of a reign where he has really served Norway well.
Alistair Bruce, we appreciate your expertise and knowledge this morning. Thank you very much for being with us. Alistair Bruce, our royal commentator, with his reflections on the news of the death of King Harald V of Norway. Of course, we'll have more details on that. More reporting from Oslo throughout the morning here on Sky News. OK, let's return to the situation in Nepal now, where the death toll from the flash flooding has passed 469. One of the worst affected areas is Dunga, that's on the banks of the Trishuli River. Our Asia correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, reports.
Well, we were just in Dunga. That's an area where about 100 homes have been wiped out. A raging river right by it has brought utter devastation. And now what so many local people feared, concern about a second wave of flooding coming through. You can see everyone trying to escape on motorbikes, a lot trying to get to higher ground, any kind of high building that they can find. Panic set in immediately, rescue teams telling us to get out, everyone trying to flee as quick as they can.
And this is why they're so terrified. They know the horror of what can happen when a huge wall of water and mud rip through a town with no warning. The police are searching for life in Nuwakot district, but it's death that surrounds them.
This is slow, challenging work down pretty impassable roads. The police here with rescue dogs trying to move through the mud, trying to search for any survivors and some of the many dead that they believe are submerged under this mud.
Look at the struggle. And this is just a snapshot of the epic task ahead. The floodwaters rose up to 30 feet high. So fast was the torrent, so remote the location, whole families were unprepared and unable to get out.
I left my shop and ran for my life after I saw the height of the water. My friend's wife and son, both of them are gone. In my neighbourhood, there was a shop run by a couple, and they were buried too.
As night falls, frustration rises. Kern's brother Bishal is one of at least 1,400 people missing.
Even if we had a body, at least we'd have something. We don't even have that. We just want some information. How many people have died? How many people have been rescued?
It is deeply chaotic here. And now there's fear, too, of a second surge. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Nuwakot, Nepal.
Here, and the new Chancellor John Healey is facing some tough decisions ahead of his first budget in late October. He's dealing with the same economic challenges that his predecessor faced, but needs to meet the vision of his new boss to reshape the country. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, reports.
What do you think of that?
Wanting to please.
Dad?
John Healey looks like another new Chancellor who's enjoying handing out the sweeties.
Boss?
Andy Burnham's new man in the Treasury in a holiday park in West Wales to highlight summer help for families, which runs out on Tuesday. Millions in savings for parents, he claims.
This great British summer savings has meant for Haven guests like these, they've saved over £4 million in the last couple of months.
But like so much this government can do, it's limited help, and he admits it doesn't solve everything. How much of a rosy gloss does he want to put on his economic inheritance? And most of all, this question, just how different will he really be from Rachel Reeves? 6 weeks into being Chancellor, what's your first priority in the role?
First priority for me, first duty I would say for any Chancellor is fiscal discipline. People hear Chancellors say that, but what does that mean? It's the bedrock of economic stability. And if you've got a stable economy, it means that families can manage with a bit more confidence. It means businesses can invest for the future.
But the country also heard Andy Burnham's pitch to the nation to be Prime Minister. And it looked to lots of us like there were massive, expensive plans, reforming social care, funding council house building, meeting defence commitments in full, new arrangements for companies like Thames Water. Your MPs are impatient for change. The country is waiting. How are you going to honour those pledges?
We're both determined we will stick within the fiscal rules, but we're both behind this longer-term vision of giving the country a future direction, more hope, and in the end, the heart of this is growth, good growth in every postcode. And so you've seen some of the steps that we've taken already, not just relieving and giving households or businesses just a bit of breathing space.
The biggest challenge, his boss, who got into number 10 with a massive promise of change.
We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years.
In that case, everything you've said, do you really think you're offering change? Or is it going to be initially, for the rest of this year and maybe the first part of next year, continuity, the continuity that your party rejected?
Well, this Labour government has been a government of change for the last 2 years. We now step that up with Andy Burnham as leader. We're the continuity of a Labour government with a change of leader, looking to see growth in every postcode.
Do you agree with Andy Burnham that council tax is fundamentally unfair and we need to look again or even start again with land taxes?
Well, we're evolving council tax. We're bringing in a top band for those who have extremely valuable properties.
Is this property inspectors knocking on people's doors?
Well, some people call it a mansion tax, but this is a top rate that's not there at the moment, and it'll help make the system just a bit fairer, because at the moment you've got some people paying the same council tax in different parts of the country for hugely different properties. So this is, but these sort of decisions, if they're relevant to the budget, I'll set them out in a couple of months' time.
Another one, your instinct on big profits made by banks who have high interest rates that they're profiting from, or energy companies that are making a lot because energy prices are high. Does that feel like good growth to you, or do you think the proceeds of that growth might be shared out better?
Well, I think you're tempting me to speculate on the budget. You know, I'll set out any decisions that I have in 2 months' time. Before that, I'm not going to respond to speculation because that only fuels more speculation.
What a contrast between the man I've just spoken to and his new boss next door in Downing Street. Of course, it's the job of the new Chancellor to temper any fears that Andy Burnham might be a spendaholic, but will they make good neighbours in the long term? So have you managed to move into the number 10 flat, number 11 flat?
About a week ago, after we had a week's holiday.
What's it like living above the shop?
It's massive. It's meant to be the small flat. We haven't got enough furniture for it. But I got my dartboard up.
To win, this Chancellor needs to keep batting back the spending request while outwitting his opponents. It's going to be a tough ask. Sam Coates, Sky News, 10B in West Wales.
Now, this weekend, it will be 5 years since the United States left Afghanistan. Since then, the Taliban have retaken control, doing everything they can to erase women and girls from public life. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, reports.
We've spent 3 weeks travelling around Afghanistan talking to ordinary people living under Taliban rules. The Taliban are building roads and routes to remote areas. Afghanistan's a country of staggering natural beauty, and after decades of war, there's much better security. Most of the poppy fields which produced much of the world's heroin have been replaced by other crops. But the Taliban's edicts have also changed every aspect of an Afghan woman's life, stripping them of the right to decide what to wear, banning them from most work and excluding them from public spaces. The UN calls it gender apartheid. That's having a knock-on effect, particularly on female healthcare. Many women in the villages won't even talk to a man they're not related to, never mind seek medical help from one. The women tell me they have to do what their husbands decide. If he won't allow me to see a male doctor and there's no female doctor, I have to stay at home, she tells me. The woman next to her says they all worry about dying in childbirth or their babies not surviving.
Have you lost any babies?
5 children.
You lost 5 children giving birth?
Yeah. One of them was a boy and one girls.
Gynecologists like Dr. Roshannon Wardak are increasingly rare. She warns the ban on female education is disastrous.
If there is no doctor, no nurse, no midwife, who will help them? The men? Their family will not allow the ladies to go and deliver their babies with a man doctor.
So what do you expect will happen?
Catastrophe.
And Alex is going to join us in the next hour to tell us more about her reporting from Afghanistan. All right, well, stay with us here on Mornings because the government have plans for cowboy builders. We'll speak to a person who has suffered from rogue traders coming into his property. Returning now to the situation in Nepal and Tibet, and just a short while ago, news came from the region that a lake has burst its banks in the Himalayas, threatening more flooding in already devastated parts of Nepal. Now, rescue operations to find people missing have been suspended for now. Locals are being told to get to higher ground if they can. The death toll in Nepal is now nearing 500, but that number is expected to rise. Let's get the latest from the Tibetan side. Our Asia correspondent Helen Smith joins us now from Beijing. Helen, great to have you with us. What's the situation as we understand it on the Tibetan side of the border?
So what we understand, according to a report on CCTV, which is the Chinese state TV station, we understand that rescue efforts have been suspended for now because, according to CCTV, according to a journalist who was on his way to the scene, there's real concern over this barrier lake that's formed. Now, a barrier lake is where the debris from a previous landslide sort of causes this temporary catchment of water, if you like. But it's absolutely huge, equivalent to about 800 Olympic swimming pools worth of water in this this sort of temporary lake, and the real fear is that it is going to burst its banks, that it is going to rush down and cause another serious wave of flooding, and as a result, rescue efforts suspended. There are reports that water is already trickling over the side of that, but it's just really difficult to ascertain what that means. You know, how serious is that flow? How big is it? Is it manageable, or is it truly life-threatening again? But I think the fact that rescue efforts have been suspended is a really, really worrying sign, and of course devastating for the many family members who are still waiting to hear what has happened to their relatives, who are still probably clinging on to that hope that by some miracle they might have survived that first wave. Look, we should say and remind ourselves that ascertaining and piecing together what's happening on the Tibet side is much, much more difficult. It is a seriously tightly controlled part of China, and the region of Tibet where this has happened is an even more tightly controlled part of Tibet. So we as foreign journalists can't go there. There are some Chinese state media journalists who are on their way there, but it's clear from the reporting that they can't even really get close at the moment just because it's so inaccessible. So many roads have been destroyed, and frankly, the disaster area is so terrible. But there are a lot of signs politically here in China that things are very, very serious indeed. Xi Jinping himself actually hosted a meeting of leaders today to arrange rescue and relief efforts, and they held a moment's silence. And that sort of thing here in China is just not that common. I'm sure, of course, there are leadership meetings behind the scenes to plan responses to disasters, but to be so public about it so soon is quite unusual and really notable. And remember, yesterday, Li Cheng, the Premier of China, the second in command, actually went to the area affected 24 hours after it happened. And for someone of that seniority to go so quickly, again, really unusual here. So I think there's a sign that we can read into this, that A, the disaster is huge on the Tibetan side. B, they are really worried about ramifications. They're really worried about secondary waves. They're really worried about just the logistics of the rescue as well. And I think also they're aware that the world's media is able to access a lot of the result of this disaster on the Nepal side. That's not always the case with natural disasters in China. They're often able to keep it quite controlled within their borders. So I think that sort of hints at why kind of the response has been so big. And look, the authorities continuing to stress just how difficult this area is to launch rescue efforts. Such steep mountains, such narrow valleys, an incredibly remote place, hundreds of miles to the nearest state capital, the nearest provincial capital of Lhasa. It really is a very, very difficult place. The authorities using the words considerable uncertainty when they talk about the rescue efforts. So I think a lot of nervousness around what's happening next on the Tibet side.
Okay, Helen Smith there reporting from Beijing on the situation on the Chinese-controlled Tibetan side of the border. Thank you for now, Helen. More from you and team later this morning. Right, let's take you to Oslo yet again for more on that news that King Harald V of Norway has died at the age of 89. He was Europe's oldest living monarch and had been taken into hospital last week to be treated for a bacterial infection in his blood. This is the latest now from Oslo, outside the royal residence there in the Norwegian capital. There will be several days of national mourning leading up to the funeral of Harald, which will take place at Oslo Cathedral. Crown Prince Haakon will now become king following the death of his father, but there will not, we're told, be a formal coronation ceremony.
Provided for the nation the great stability it needed through quite a lot of changes and challenges and political movement. And I think that for him, he has always continued that tradition that he inherited from his father, King Olaf, who guided the nation through all the elements after the Second World War, and his grandfather, King Haakon, who came to the throne when Norway chose to be a monarchy in 1905. So he's the third of the line who have served Norway. And he has always been very, very dedicated to the work that he did. And he will be greatly missed because as a constitutional monarch, he has been the absolute template.
The royal commentator Alistair Bruce reporting. They will have more, of course, on the death of King Harald throughout the morning. Now, cowboy builders are set to come under tougher scrutiny after a new plan put forward by the government to help people hire trustworthy builders. Our correspondent Amelia Harper has been covering the plights that people face having to deal with people that come into their homes and don't do the job properly. And she joins us now. Amelia, your reporting has really led the way on this, and there are great concerns that people have when they outlay so much money and the work isn't actually done. What are the government planning to do here?
Well, we've had this announcement today about a plan to really tackle cowboy builders. And for those who maybe just quickly don't know kind of what that term means, it's quite a broad term, a little bit of a grey area. Can be anything from someone who's exceptionally incompetent and whose build quality is really bad to someone who is repeatedly fraudulent. So, for example, takes money, a deposit for a job and never starts. So what's happening today is that the government wants to set out, and bear in mind this is not legislation, so they want to set out a new government-supported scheme, they say, to help people identify and hire trusted traders with confidence. So businesses will be able to, traders will be able to sign up to an approved code, and they have to meet three things: high standards of customer service, transparency and dispute resolution. Secondly, there will be a new payment system. And this is a system that they say will protect people's money during building projects, with payments directly linked to key project milestones. I've got a number of outstanding questions still on this. Things like when it comes to this payment app, who is going to be inspecting those homes? Is it going to be a picture on the app? Who looks at that? Is it the builder themselves? Are they marking their own homework? These milestones in terms of transparency or dispute resolution, how do you actually measure that? What about things like build quality as a tangible measurement? What actual things are builders going to have to say that they can do, or the standard that they have to meet as part of this approved code? So an interesting step. I think definitely overall it's a step in the right direction, but questions still about penalties. What happens, when a builder signs up to this but actually falls short of these requirements, of which we're not totally sure? If they're not penalised, are they expelled from the building sector? Because otherwise nothing will change.
Yeah, let's hear from the minister. We spoke to her earlier, or rather you spoke to her earlier, to lay out the government's plan. We'll talk again off the back.
We'll be reviewing this policy really, really closely, the impact it will have, the take-up, to make sure that absolutely it is protecting people in this space, protecting them against cowboy builders so they're not ripped off. Their lifetime savings that they've worked so hard for, they've saved this significant event, that they're not ripped off by someone who they can't trust with the home. So that's why we're acting with this urgency, back in this industry-led scheme that's launching next week. But this is no means the end.
Well, that's Kate Dearden, the Minister for Consumer Protection. Let's bring in now Francis Weston, who actually featured in Amelia's reporting about these cowboy builders. Francis, thanks very much for being with us. We appreciate you making the time. Before we go through your story, just tell us what you've made on the sort of the initial news that the government have announced today.
I mean, it feels a lot like more window dressing. It's another round of badges for people to wear that don't really offer any sort of credible means of redress for people who suffer from these cowboy builders. It looks good and it'll offer lots of nice sound bites for ministers, but I think practically it's not going to do anything to help the situation at all.
So, Francis, give us your story and what happened with you and your interaction with these people.
Yeah, so in theory, what happened here would have been ideal for this this app, this system they set up. We did have stage payments that were going on, and we had a building inspector who was checking these milestones off before payments could be made, and yet they didn't find problems. So in that situation, this new app and this new scheme wouldn't have helped us at all. My mum had a loft conversion started. The work was so bad that the entire roof and the floor ceilings below had to be entirely removed and rebuilt. It's cost nearly 200,000 in total between the original money that was taken and then the rebuild costs.
Francis, it's Amelia. It's really good to speak again. You've had a horrendous time. You originally and your mum, Karen, spent 90,000, and it's cost that again twice to actually try to fix this. I filmed with you back in April time, perhaps a little bit sooner. Has anything changed?
No, we've had no progress with anyone. There basically is no progress to be had now. Everybody refuses to do anything. The people that could do things and should do things have refused point blank to do anything. For example, the building safety regulator has said they will not investigate things that happened before 2024.
And remind us how many people you have actually tried to reach out to actually get this done. Because I look at this app, and my question, Francis, and probably your question as well, I've had a number of texts from other homeowners this morning, is who is actually looking at these payments? Who is actually determining whether you reach that threshold? And also, will there be a centralised feature within this app that you can refer the problem on to the relevant authority? You've had a horrendous time trying to get people to look at it. Just talk us through who you've approached.
So I've got a brief list of some of the ones that I looked at, and it was SICA, ACAI, the BCA, LABC, CIOB, the ARB, GasSafe, NIC-EIC, the Office of Product Safety and Standards, the BRAC, Action Fraud, went to my local MP, obviously Citizens Advice, and Trading Standards, and no one has helped at all.
Wow.
What's your impression, Francis, just briefly, of these sort of measurements, supposedly, that builders will have to make? In your opinion, how does one test for transparency, for customer service standards, for dispute resolution?
I don't think there is a reasonable way of testing. I think the ones that are already doing this and are good, great, they get to sign up and nothing will change for them, apart from possibly the costs going up for the consumer. For the people that won't do it and aren't doing it, they're not going to be signing up to this anyway. Yeah. But even so, you've got systems like we had problems with GasSafe where the GasSafe plumber did bad work, was sent back, did it wrong again. GasSafe themselves, their first inspector, missed things in their inspection. It's just another scheme that is going to fail. The schemes we already have are failing. Why not look at how we fix those instead of introducing yet another one that's going to fail?
Francis, can I just ask how you came upon the first people that came into your house? I mean, many people, if they're looking for someone to do work on the house, will go on the internet, they'll scroll through things, and then they'll perhaps make what they think is an informed decision based on what they've seen online. But of course, if you don't know the person, you don't know the work they've done, you actually don't know anything. How did you guys decide upon those that were coming to your house first?
Yeah, so we had an original architectural designer who designed a loft conversion. He put that design out to tender and had building companies come to him. We had 3 people come around, 3 different companies, spoke to them, looked at their work, saw their qualification, or what we thought were qualifications. We picked the one that was in sort of the medium price band. It was a reasonable price rather than going for the cheap option, which is always a bit of a red flag. And they seemed trustworthy. It was that only later that we found out that they had basically lied about a lot of things. Okay. And that the people that could have picked this up earlier had chosen not to. For example, they lied about being an architect. The architect registration board had already warned them about doing this with previous companies, but had chosen not to take any action. So when it happened again, they again chose not to do anything.
Francis, look, we appreciate you coming on and telling us your story again, Francis. I'm sorry to hear that you haven't been able to get a resolution to this, but I know Amelia will be in contact and we'll hopefully hear from you soon, and you'll have some resolution to that property that you're working on for Mum. Thank you very much for your time, Francis. And I think, Amelia, I think this final answer there is what's kind of so concerning for people, because I guess Francis and family, they would have thought they did exactly the right thing. It was a recommendation through an architect who found people, and then they pick the one that they think is right, and
Yeah, and so many times, Kamali, you know, people are not picking the lowest, like Francis, they're not picking the lowest quote because they think that might be a red flag. You know, a lot of people are very good at talking, and I think builders I've spoken to are really frustrated that these particular subset of builders are tarnishing the entire construction trade with their poor work. And one question, finally, I have is, will builders sign up for this in terms of this app if there is a risk that they lose control of their cash flow?
Really interesting. Question for another time.
Yeah, there's more to this.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for that. Now, UEFA, European football's governing body, is preparing to bring criminal proceedings against the FIFA boss Gianni Infantino over his now failed plan to sell off parts of the World Cup. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has the latest.
Well, this is a serious intensifying of the pressure being put on Gianni Infantino by UEFA. They're not just getting him to withdraw the plan, which they did to try to sell shares in the World Cup. This is about holding Infantino to account, and there could now be serious legal consequences for him, because I obtained legal documents filed in the United States, in Florida, New York and Colorado, which show UEFA is requesting all the evidence that was held relating to the talks around this venture that Infantino tried to launch, having negotiated it in secret for so many months before blindsiding the world of football just a month or so ago with his attempts to privatise the World Cup. Now, UEFA is seeking information from FIFA, which has a legal HQ in Miami, also from the financial institutions involved in trying to raise the money for this venture. And the legal document talks about being a fraudulently low price, the $20 billion valuation for this World Cup venture. It might seem a lot of money, but the most recent World Cup is said by FIFA to have generated around $15 billion alone. And the sense was to try to raise $4.2 billion from the private investors, so selling off about 20% of the World Cup. And the documents I've seen show that UEFA is accusing Gianni Infantino of potential criminal mismanagement, and they are pursuing potentially launching criminal proceedings in Switzerland. Now, FIFA and the associated parties, who are called conspirators in the legal documents, could try to claim this is a fishing expedition to try to gain documents, messages, exchanges that took place, within a view, though, from UEFA to try to launch this action. Now, UEFA could have to establish that there has been damage to the detriment of FIFA caused by Infantino secretly trying to land this plan on the members around the world. But it also talks about how Infantino was trying to offer a financial inducement to the football associations to rapidly accept this plan. They were being offered potentially $80 million over 12 years, but they had to agree with it within weeks. Of course, it was then abandoned a few weeks ago, given the escalating backlash and outrage, and after one of Infantino's own senior advisors resigned in a statement to me, calling it a bad deal. So all of this situation has now moved well beyond pure football, because UEFA is trying to ensure there is legal consequence for Gianni Infantino, all as they try to force his departure. The election at FIFA coming up next March. There are many who are trying to push for his resignation far sooner than then, with crisis talks still going on here in Monaco as UEFA launches the season, as football is engulfed in an escalating civil war.
All right, Matthew has joined us yet again for a look through the morning newspapers. Matthew, we're going to get through some more of the stories here.
Yes, again, doesn't sound very positive.
Oh, that's good. I was very pleased to have you here yet again. We're going to start, if we can, Matthew, with this story about the Navy not being ready to deal with threats from Russia. We've had another threat come in from Russia the past week.
So it's difficult to know how scary this should be, isn't it? And we don't get very excited as a country at the moment about defence threats, but they are all around us. Look, this follows on from a Russian spokeswoman yesterday for Russia's foreign ministry, threatening to hit British military sites and equipment inside and outside Ukraine in response to British missiles being used in strikes on Russia. This particular story that we've got here It's fascinating because this is from the head of the Royal Navy, who's speaking in a podcast, talking about how Britain and our allies could face potentially unavoidable, and then inverted commas, catastrophic events as we struggle to contain Russia's undersea capabilities. I don't think people properly realise the extent to which we are reliant on what goes on under the waters that surround our island.
We need to be able to protect it. I do a weekly podcast with Professor Michael Clark, and I put this to him that rhetorically, at least for the past year or so, we have talked about the threat from Russia. And whether or not that threat, I mean, you and I talk about it regularly, so we're aware of it, but how much that is kind of seeping into society.
Yes.
And whether we are prepared for what Michael calls a militarised confrontation in the next couple of years, that will be a real test, and it's how the UK passes that test. If it fails that test, then it's something else. We enter down a path that
we've heard so much about the defence review and defence spending, and this budget now, as we were talking about earlier, is being framed by some as a defence budget, how we're going to find the funding for defence. But it's also about how we spend the money. So you can have a review, but that can then very quickly be out of date. We've had the warning signs of what's going on in the Ukraine war, the invasion by Russia, and in Iran, and the way that warfare is moving on. But just a reminder, what goes on underwater is really critical. We think so much about satellites, but communication under the sea and then energy reaching us over the sea, this is really important stuff.
We're ready to protect it. All right, we're going to move on to a story in The Guardian. The headline here, undiagnosed PTSD after childbirth affects thousands of women. So it's a new study. Take us through the reporting here.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's fascinating and it's distressing. And effectively, the story is that at least 15,000 cases of PTSD after childbirth seem to be being missed a year, but it could be double or even more than that because doctors are not sufficiently aware of the warning signs, and it can get confused with postnatal depression. So these are serious issues facing women. We've had a lot in recent times about maternity care and the standards of maternity care in this country. And of course, whenever you address this sort of story, you have to remember that there are thousands of midwives and doctors doing really good, really important work, and you don't want to sort of take the whole house down with you. But it has to be focused on in a laser-like fashion, I think. And this is about what happens after birth and the effects on mothers. Really important.
Really important study there that's been carried out, the reporting there in The Guardian. Just to follow on again, I think this is also in The Guardian, it's in other papers as well. Following Meta's decision to settle its court case, now this reporting suggests that Britain expects Meta to match the child safety measures of the US settlement. And some of those are really groundbreaking. I mean, like the sort of the curfews on children being able to use these apps is something that the British government wanted to see happen that wasn't going to happen until potentially this case.
Yeah, so the key thing here is that the progress being made, if that's what you call it, and I would call it, as a consequence of this massive settlement. I say massive, but although the cost for Meta could be up to £13 billion, that's a fraction, of course, of what it's ultimately worth, but nonetheless, huge scale, that we get the benefits of that settlement here in Britain, and it's not just America where this action was fought. Interestingly, if you spool forward to the end of this piece, a senior lecturer in digital economy and society education at King's College London, Dr. Rachel Kent, she has said that the settlement does not fundamentally redesign the engagement-driven model. So there seems to be a lot of progress still to be made. This is a really key and important story because it affects our young people as well as us as adults.
Yeah, it most certainly does. And in their settling, there's no admission there from Meta of the addictive nature of these apps, but there is sort of the suggestion that they know that something, they want to deal with this, something is wrong with them.
I mean, anyone watching today who uses social media more than very, very casually will surely be able to tell you that there is an addictive element to it. It doesn't take an expert to tell you that, I don't think.
We're going to move on to a story here that's been giving me sort of anxiety as I've been looking at the pictures of this, and this is a new roller coaster in the United States.
You are a roller coaster man, aren't you?
I used to like them when I was younger, but as I was saying to you guys off camera, even the look of them makes me slightly sweaty.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of fun angle to this is how on earth would anyone ever go on anything like this? It just wouldn't get me anywhere near it. I mean, I have great admiration for those who are completely fearless and not for me. But the much more serious thing here is that this extreme roller coaster, which is aimed at so-called the ultimate daredevil, has left thrill seekers with traumatic brain injuries. This is according to doctors. Really shocking stuff, and I think it is partly to do with how the head bangs back against the safety infrastructure.
And the thing is, the roller coaster technology has moved on so much. This thing has rotating seats, of course, sudden steep drops, but the fact that you're being sort of whisked around in your chair more so than normally in a traditional roller coaster, I guess, is added to the dangers of these. And that's a roller coaster that's at Six Flags in Southern California.
I was going to say, sometimes it's best to follow your instincts. In my case, not to go anywhere near these sorts of things, but some people's instincts take them towards it, run towards the danger.
I like a lazy river. I like a nice, easy, lazy river. Matthew, always good to have you with us. Thanks so much for being with us. Stay with us here on Mornings. Your headlines coming up next.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello there and good morning to you. It is 9 a.m. and this is Mornings with me, Kamali Melbourne. Here are your headlines. Devastation and desperation. Fears of more flooding in Nepal and Tibet as a lake bursts its banks and the death toll continues to rise.
The hope is that they will continue these rescues, that the helicopters can keep coming in. But right now, most people are trying to leave, trying to get somewhere high to safety.
Rescuers crawl through the mud to try and find survivors as fears grow for the 33 missing British tourists.
If I could put a message out to my parents if they could see me there, is that we're staying strong on our end. We're hopeful for your return.
Breaking news this morning out of Oslo. Norway's King Harald V has died at the age of 89. Also ahead, UEFA's latest move in its attempts at unseating Gianni Infantino, beginning legal proceedings against the FIFA president. Plus, 5 years after the United States left Afghanistan, we explore life under Taliban rule, where women have been stripped to their most basic of rights. Thank you for being with us. We begin this hour with the devastating situation on the Nepal-Tibet border, where this morning rescue operations have been suspended and people told to get to higher ground, because there is a fear more flooding could be on its way. Authorities say that a lake on the border in Tibet has burst its banks. The death toll in Nepal is now nearing 500, but that number is expected to rise significantly. Well, the scale of the destruction is gradually being uncovered as extraordinary footage reveals just what's been left of the hardest hit areas. The Red Cross says that entire villages have been destroyed, with the floods swallowing bridges and roads, leaving communities cut off and in need of aid. Well, for rescuers, the terrain is completely unforgiving. Nepalese authorities, though, say that at this stage they're not requesting assistance from the outside world. Here you can see soldiers attempting to rescue people trapped in the tunnel of a hydropower plant. They were among the 900 rescued across the region yesterday. Now, in neighbouring Tibet, the impact of the flooding is also starting to be revealed. Along with that alert that that lake has breached its banks, there are warnings to locals and rescuers to get to safety if they can. Well, this is the situation currently. The death toll in Nepal has risen to 469. Authorities are working to search for some of the more than 1,000 people who are still missing across both Nepal and Tibet. Of those missing, at least 540 are foreigners, 33 are Britons. Well, in Jiryong in Tibet, 558 people are missing, including 260 foreign nationals. 3 people are confirmed dead there. Well, our reporter Neville Lazarus sent us this from Duj Bazaar.
We are in the 3rd day of this absolute catastrophe that has hit Nepal, one of the poorest countries in the world. At the moment, we are hearing from the Nepal police 469 bodies have been recovered, but there are hundreds still missing. And this is what they are trying to do, is to, using earth movers, trying to remove debris, not only to find missing bodies, but also to pave a road. This used to be a bazaar where there were about 400 or 450 homes, establishments, shops around in this place, a bustling market. But see what has happened. It's, almost all of them have been damaged. The water, the silts, the soil, debris has reached almost the first floor of these homes. The river has sort of eaten up not only the banks but also the higher ground here. We are seeing the Home Minister of Nepal. He's come here overseeing the operations. From Sky News UK.
Let me work. Let me show us, right?
Yeah. We did speak to a man earlier on who said he has lost everything. Almost 40 members of his family, his extended family, friends. More than 40 members of my family is missing. I'm so worried, but what can I do? It's nature's play. We are helpless. There's been quite a scramble. There's just been announcements by this police people. I can come up. He is announcing that there is information of the floods coming this side. So they are evacuating everyone. Even the workers have been moved out from this area. A lot of confusion. People are really anxious, are very scared of what might come. There has been information earlier on that from upstream there is a blockage that could break any time and could cause another flood. But yeah, there is a lot of anxiousness, and we can see the authorities making announcements, getting people out from this place. This has been the worst hit, and now they're not taking any chances.
Was Neville Lynch reporting? Well, Cordelia Lynch is also there on the ground and sent us this.
It is a very chaotic scene here in Nuwakot district. You can see the army that's been hard at work, carrying out rescue operations, trying to bring back any survivors from some of the hardest hit areas. We've actually just been told that they will be pausing operations for a 90-minute window, and that is because we've received news of a dammed lake that has burst its banks. Now, that's raised concern about secondary disasters, about landslides, and possible further loss of life. So just in here is a centre where some of those people have been landing on the helicopters. We've seen a pretty steady stream of that across the morning. Some very badly injured, others just carrying what little belongings they have left. Very lucky, very grateful to still be alive. But there are also many grieving families here too that have lost entire households. I just spoke to one woman who said that thousands of people from her village were killed, an elderly woman who somehow managed to escape in time. It's a pretty dire picture, and you get a sense of just how much the Nepali authorities are under pressure. The hope is that they will continue these rescues, that the helicopters can keep coming in. But right now, most people are trying to leave, trying to get somewhere high to safety.
Well, the King and Queen have said that they are heartbroken by news of the disaster. At least 33 British people are missing, including 2 teenagers. Among those missing, Mala and Bipin Patel, who left from Coventry to go to Nepal on pilgrimage. Our correspondent, Shaman Freeman-Powell, has been speaking to their son, Anant.
What they were part of is a group that was going to the Gosaikunda Lake. So that was a pilgrimage that would go through Nepal and into China, the Tibet area, to auspicious sites as part of their religious sort of beliefs. And unfortunately, they've been caught up in this landslide disaster. The last time I made contact with them was on Tuesday. They updated me on the itinerary of their trip and indicated to me that they would be looking to cross over into China the next day via the Jurong border crossing in Nepal. I knew my parents were in the area, but obviously, you know, as more and more information emerged about where exactly this landslide occurred, more concerns sort of came about, and myself and our wider family became more and more concerned for their whereabouts. There's been a complete lack of information, understandably, given the remote location where they were based. I think what's really concerned me now is the length of time where no clear information has really emerged. When we've contacted the Foreign Office, as much as they have provided sort of support avenues, the information has been practically non-existent.
Turning now to our other top story this morning, and the news that King Harold of Norway has died at the age of 89. King Charles has said he extends his deepest and most heartfelt condolence to the Norwegian royal family following the death of King Harold, who he described as a dear cousin. Harold, who was Europe's oldest living monarch, was taken into hospital last week where he's being treated for a bacterial infection. Well, let's take a look at the scene currently in Oslo, the royal residence there in the capital city. There will be several days of national mourning prior to Harold's funeral, which will be held at Oslo Cathedral. Well, our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce, is standing by for us and joins us now live. Alistair, good morning to you. So the passing of a man who's been on the throne for many decades.
Yes, since 1991, King Harold has been the figurehead of Norway, and he has become much loved by the nation. And I think that his passing earlier today, his death, is a great sadness for that nation, a nation that's gone through a great deal during his period as monarch. And he's always brought his great sense of humour, his pragmatism, and his determination to carry on the tradition that his grandfather began when this particular line of kings started in 1905. And King Harald, with the love story he's had for his queen, Sonja, has been the figurehead for Norway over that period. And I think it's very special that Queen Sonja was right beside him at the time of his death, and it does bring to an end a great love story.
Alistair, tell us about King Harald, how he reigned, and how he was seen by Norwegians.
Well, I think the way he reigned was by being entirely constitutional. And on the day that his father, King Olaf, died in 1991, he was there to say that he was determined to take on that constitution and to do it in the form that it should be done. And he has held that steadiness all the way through. And he has been, I think, the pivot around which Norway has evolved. There was that awful occasion when a lone gunman went onto an island and started shooting a large number of children who were enjoying a party. And Norway was greatly struck by that. And King Harald, in his own way, created a stability and a means through which Norway could deal with that awful story. And I think that's the way he has reigned. And he has maintained, just as he learned from his father, King Olaf, and he did from Haakon VII, those traditions. And I think he has passed them now to his son, the new King Haakon VIII, who became sovereign this morning. And that process of handover will be very quick. And it will be, I think, a testament to the carry on and the, I suppose, the gift that Haakon has been given by his father.
And Alistair, talk to us about the connections with our own royal family. I read out the tribute from King Charles, who described King Harold as a dear cousin.
Well, they are cousins, and I think that this is part of why there has been such a close bond. King Harold was a regular visitor to the United Kingdom. He was a mad, keen fisherman and came over all the time and knew our king and queen very, very well. And I think that he knew particularly Queen Elizabeth II because their reigns were contiguous. And so that relationship thrived. You see, King Harold's grandmother was an English princess who married a very humble Danish Prince Carl, who was then asked to become the first king of Norway in the new era in 1905. So that link is very close. So both King Charles and King Harold, and now King Haakon, share King Edward VII as a forebear. So that creates this cousinly relationship. But I think that that just builds upon the strengths that exist between all the different monarchies of Europe who know each other. But they sit side by side, as King Harold did in his way, in maintaining the representation of different European nations working together.
And while Norway will be in mourning for the passing of King Harold, the royal family there has been under some pressure. There's been some scandal within the family group in the past few years, hasn't there, Alistair?
Yes, it's been very difficult, I think, for the new King Haakon that his wife, Queen Mette-Marit. She's been extremely ill recently, but the son she had and brought into their marriage from her previous relationship has recently been found guilty on drug trafficking and rape charges and been to prison. Now, that's not an easy thing to carry. Queen Mette-Marit had to admit and apologise for her association with Jeffrey Epstein. That is another element. But I think that, you know, inevitably in this period of post-deference, there are different attitudes to monarchy, and it's up to King Haakon VIII to pick up where his late father laid down his burden literally in the last few hours, and to make sure that he can be the constitutional monarch that Norway needs. Of course, he will go later today to make his oath at the Storting, which is the parliament in Norway. And that parliament will decide the future of the monarchy if that was to come up. The people of Norway will decide. But I think there's no great movement for that to happen now. And I think that the option in this moment of sadness for the family, I think Norway will rally around and wish King Haakon VIII well as he starts his reign. And I think he has every element of good guidance from his late father and his wonderful mother, who can keep him on the straight and narrow and help him through what has been a difficult time coming up to his accession, and now I'm sure will be a challenge as he moves forward.
Alistair Bruce, our royal commentator, thank you for that, Alistair, there, reflecting on the passing of King Harold V. Now, this weekend, it'll be 5 years since the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. Since then, the Taliban have retaken control, doing everything they can to erase women and girls from public life. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, has this.
We've spent 3 weeks travelling around Afghanistan talking to ordinary people living under Taliban rules. The Taliban are building roads and routes to remote areas. Afghanistan's a country of staggering natural beauty, and after decades of war, there's much better security. Most of the poppy fields, which produced much of the world's heroin, have been replaced by other crops. But the Taliban's edicts have also changed every aspect of an Afghan woman's life, stripping them of the right to decide what to wear, banning them from most work and excluding them from public spaces. The UN calls it gender apartheid. That's having a knock-on effect, particularly on female healthcare. Many women in the villages won't even talk to a man they're not related to, never mind seek medical help from one. The women tell me they have to do what their husbands decide. If he won't allow me to see a male doctor and there's no female doctor, I have to stay at home, she tells me. The woman next to her says they all worry about dying in childbirth or their babies not surviving.
Have you lost any babies?
5 children.
You lost 5 children giving birth?
Yeah. One of them was a boy and one was girls.
Gynecologists like Dr. Roshannon Wardak are increasingly rare. She warns the ban on female education is disastrous.
If there is no doctor, no nurse, no midwife, who will help them? The men? Their family will not allow the ladies to go and deliver their babies with a man doctor.
So what do you expect will happen?
Catastrophe.
I'm very pleased to say our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, joins us now live. Alex, fantastic reporting from you and team, as always. Of course, this is not your first time in Afghanistan. Just describe how much has changed in the time you were last there to your most recent visit.
There have been enormous changes. I mean, the first time I went to Afghanistan, I was pregnant with one of my daughters. She's now 24 years old. At that time, when I spoke to a Taliban official, he refused to look at me. I had to wear a hijab. He wouldn't even take my questions directly from me, even though he spoke perfect English. He took it from a man. In the intervening 20 years of international troops invading and occupying Afghanistan, there was some progress with everyone going to school, everyone going to universities. There was a big increase in progress as far as women were concerned. I went when Kabul fell to the Taliban in the weeks leading up to it, and in the intervening years, the few years since I've not been back, I wasn't allowed back because I was viewed as not producing positive enough stories, because I did focus on their very strict policies against women. This time, I felt that things have got a lot worse for women. The UN has called the country now sort of exerting the most repressive policies against women in the world, and that's quite a status to be in. It's a deeply depressing country if you are female. There is, however, an underground movement where they're trying to break through this. The Taliban has definitely introduced a degree of security because if you have taken a country by force and you're holding it using a gun, you can exert some sort of security. I was stunned by the level of building and construction. They are relaying roads and they are doing a lot of building. But as far as women are concerned, it has gone terribly much worse, with a number of edicts and rules being introduced just whilst we were there. The most recent being that a woman has to ask the permission of her husband to actually leave the house. And that has set back women's rights enormously. They have no rights at the moment.
Extraordinary. Alex, you'll remember, and our viewers may remember as well, that when the Taliban took over, there was this fear, of course, that this would happen, and some rhetoric from the Taliban seems to suggest they might not go down this path, but of course they did. They went down this path, and as you're laying out, they have completely now cemented the fact that women are being entirely subjugated. What's the international community got to say about this? Is there any conversation with those in the government in Kabul? Is there any way of raising the plight of women to those that are in power?
Definitely the Taliban made a lot of promises which they have failed to keep over the last 5 years. In fact, they've introduced very specific laws. Out of 800 different edicts and rules, they've introduced more than 100 specifically focused at stripping away female rights. They are very much on a charm offensive. They're encouraging tourism. They're trying to get social media influencers with very large social media platforms to come and gloss over what's happening to women and focus instead on Afghanistan's incredible beauty and the security and the fact that there are lots of places that you can go and have a wonderful time in, and Afghan hospitality is legendary. There is a worrying level of communication with the international community where the Taliban is trying to say unlock our assets, unfreeze our financial assets, lift the sanctions, come back to the country, restart your embassies, because we can't make progress, which they're still promising, unless we have this financial support. And I know that there are a number of different countries, at least 20, which are starting to, including Britain, which are starting to explore further engagement with the Taliban, if not going as far as recognising them. Only one country officially recognises the Taliban regime, and that's Russia so far. But the problem is that engaging with the Taliban is seen by many of the Afghan women as abandoning them completely, and they are very, very worried that any engagement as far as business contracts and opening up Afghanistan to financial investment actually ignores what's happening on the ground to them, and it is, for them, a dystopian nightmare.
Certainly is. Alex, appreciate the reporting. We can speak with you again, I'm sure, throughout the day, and you can watch Alex's full film here on Sky News online and, of course, on our app and on our YouTube page, and I advise that you do. All right, stay with us here on Mornings, because the new Chancellor has told us he can deliver the change promised by his new boss. We'll have that and more next.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Now, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, John Healey, is facing tough decisions ahead of his first budget in late October. Now, of course, he's dealing with the same economic challenges that his predecessor faced, but he needs to meet the new vision of his new boss, Andy Burnham. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, went to Tenby to speak to Mr. Healey.
What do you think of that?
Wanting to please.
Dad?
John Healey looks like another new Chancellor who's enjoying handing out the sweeties.
Boss?
Andy Burnham's new man in the Treasury in a holiday park in West Wales to highlight summer help for families, which runs out on Tuesday. Millions in savings for parents, he claims.
This Great British Summer Savings has meant for Haven guests like these, they've saved over £4 million in the last couple of months.
But like so much this government can do, it's limited help, and he admits it doesn't solve everything. How much of a rosy gloss does he want to put on his economic inheritance? And most of all, this question: just how different will he really be from Rachel Reeves?
6 weeks into being Chancellor, what's your first priority in the role?
First priority for me, first duty I would say for any Chancellor is fiscal discipline. People hear Chancellors say that, but what does that mean? It's the bedrock of economic stability. And if you've got a stable economy, it means that families can manage with a bit more confidence. It means businesses can invest for the future.
But the country also heard Andy Burnham's pitch to the nation to be Prime Minister. And it looked to lots of us like there were massive, expensive plans, reforming social care, funding council house building, meeting defence commitments in full, new arrangements for companies like Thames Water. Your MPs are impatient for change. The country is waiting. How are you going to honour those pledges?
We're both determined we will stick within the fiscal rules, but we're both behind this longer-term vision of giving the country a future direction, more hope, and in the end, the heart of this is growth. Good growth in every postcode. And so you've seen some of the steps that we've taken already, not just relieving and giving households or businesses just a bit of breathing space.
The biggest challenge, his boss, who got into number 10 with a massive promise of change.
We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years.
In that case, everything you've said, do you really think you're offering change? Or is it going to be initially, for the rest of this year and maybe the first part of next year, continuity, the continuity that your party rejected?
This Labour government has been a government of change for the last 2 years. We now step that up with Andy Burnham as leader. We're the continuity of a Labour government with a change of leader, looking to see growth in every postcode.
Do you agree with Andy Burnham that council tax is fundamentally unfair and we need to look again or even start again with land taxes?
Well, we're evolving council tax. We're bringing in a top band for those who have extremely valuable properties.
Is this property inspectors knocking on people's doors?
Well, some people call it a mansion tax, but this is a top rate that's not there at the moment, and it'll help make the system just a bit fairer, because at the moment you've got some people paying the same council tax in different parts of the country for hugely different properties. So this is, but these sort of decisions, if they're relevant to the budget, I'll set them out in a couple of months' time.
Another one, your instinct on big profits made by banks who have high interest rates that they're profiting from, or energy companies that are making a lot because energy prices are high.
Does that feel like good growth to you, or do you think the proceeds of that growth might be shared out better?
Well, I think you're tempting me to speculate on the budget. You know, I'll set out any decisions that I have in 2 months' time. Before that, I'm not going to respond to speculation because that only feels more speculation.
What a contrast between the man I've just spoken to and his new boss next door in Downing Street. Of course, it's the job of the new Chancellor to temper any fears that Andy Burnham might be a spendaholic, but will they make good neighbours in the long term? So have you managed to move into the number 10 flat, number 11 flat?
About a week ago, after we had a week's holiday.
What's it like living above the shop?
It's massive. It's meant to be the small flat. We haven't got enough furniture for it. But I got my dartboard up.
To win, this Chancellor needs to keep batting back the spending request while outwitting his opponents. It's going to be a tough ask. Sam Coates, Sky News, 10B in West Wales.
Right, stay with us here on Mornings, because coming up very shortly, we're going to look at UEFA's latest move to try and bring criminal proceedings, they say, against the boss of FIFA, Gianni Infantino. Thanks for staying with us. Return to our top story, and in the last few hours, news has emerged that a lake has burst its banks in the Himalayas, threatening more flooding in already devastated parts of the region. Now, the rescue operation to find hundreds of people still missing has been suspended for a few hours, with locals being told to get to higher ground if they can. The death toll in Nepal is now nearing 500, but that number is expected to continue rising. Now, in Tibet, the impact of the flooding is also being revealed. In the last few minutes, Chinese state media confirmed rescue operations on the Tibetan side have now resumed after water levels in the lake dropped slightly. And at 7 o'clock tonight, we are going to have a special programme all about the latest from the region. You'll hear from our correspondents who are on the ground, and we'll bring you all of the latest picture, as well as news of the search for those 33 missing Britons. That is at 7 o'clock tonight here on Sky News. Now, our other breaking news this morning is the news that King Harald V of Norway has died at the age of 89. He was the oldest living monarch in Europe and had been taken into hospital last week to be treated for a bacterial infection in his blood. Well, this is the Norwegian royal residence in Oslo. As you can see, people have already begun to gather and lay floral tributes for King Harald. There will be several days of mourning leading up to the funeral, which will be held in Oslo Cathedral. Our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce, has been reflecting on the news and has said how much King Harald was a part of royalty across Europe.
Provided for the nation the great stability it needed through quite a lot of changes and challenges and political movement. And I think that for him, he has always continued that tradition that he inherited from his father, King Olaf, who guided the nation through all the elements after the Second World War, and his grandfather, King Haakon, who came to the throne when Norway chose to be a monarchy in 1905. So he's the third of the line who have served Norway. And he has always been very, very dedicated to the work that he did. And he will be greatly missed because as a constitutional monarch, he has been the absolute template.
Well, King Charles, the royal family, have put out a statement in response to the passing of King Harald, and it reads, It is with profound sadness that my wife and I have learned of the death of our dear cousin, King Harald V of Norway. For 35 years, King Harald served his people with unwavering dedication, guiding Norway through times of great change with warmth and humility. As Norway mourns the loss of so towering a figure, my whole family join in remembering a much-loved kinsman and friend whose kindness, compassion and deep sense of duty echoed from across the sea and across the decades. Well, that is the words of King Charles sending his condolence to the Norwegian royal family following the death of King Harald V. We'll have more, of course, from Oslo throughout the morning. Now, there has been an increase here in the number of acid attacks recently, with figures showing a worrying increase in particular in the number of female victims. Well, let's speak now to Lineti Kirungi, who is the founder of Hope Care Rescue Mission, who has survived an acid attack. Lineti, thank you very much for being with us, and good morning to you. First of all, why don't you tell us your story and how you came to this point where you're now campaigning for there to be more awareness about this?
My story, I would say, is not different from most of the women. I was attacked with acid in 2012 after turning down a marriage proposal from my controlling ex-boyfriend.
And following that, of course, you recovered and you went on to live your life. But now we're seeing there's an increase in the number of acid attacks. Do we have any idea why that is increasing?
Of course, the increase, acid has always been used as a weapon of revenge. And why it's being used, of course, when we have to look at what is causing this, one of it being there is easy accessibility of acid. Mm-hmm. For example, where I come from in Uganda, acid is sold like any other commodity on the market. Mm-hmm. It's like you're buying tomatoes on the market, you just buy it. There's no one who's going to ask you why are you taking it, who you are. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing about identification or maybe for people to know what's the purpose you're going to have it for. And of course, we have issues of ineffective legislation when it comes to the sale of acid, use of acid, storage of acid, and of course, transportation of acid. Then, of course, gender-based violence has been the major form of acid violence, whereby most of the men, I would really say men, have been the major perpetrators, where they tend to use acid as a way of controlling or maybe harming women, and at times they just want to cause the damage so that they can keep on looking at you, looking differently from how it used to look like. And we have also those ones who will ban you only what they want to see. Like if at all you've turned down like a marriage proposal, which is a rejection kind of punishment, the man will be like, since you've rejected me, another person will not have you. At least let me cause this damage, let me make you disfigured so that no one else will have you. At least it's like he feels like he has won the battle.
I mean, that kind of gender-based violence, of course, is something that the government say they're trying to tackle. You use the word revenge as well. There's something sort of darkly pernicious about the decision to use acid, as you're sort of pointing out, that it perhaps doesn't kill a person, but it causes life.
Acid really kills. Many people really think acid doesn't kill. I've worked with burns victims and most of the acid survivors in the burns unit for more than 10 years. I've seen people dying in my own hands. I've got 2 kids in my care, and the mother just died and said, there's no one I can trust because I've been burnt by my own husband, and my family, the family resented her. She didn't have anyone who she could trust with her children. So really, acid kills. It's just luck you survive. And of course, at times, if you have the resources, some people undergo around 30 surgeries, others undergo, it's like more of a lifelong journey, which you will never come out until you accept that this is how I've got to live and I've got to carry on.
Your strength is coming through in your words, Lenetti. You talked about the government not having the right legislation in place. What needs to happen?
Of course, we need strict laws on sale. When I talk about the sale, if I'm selling acid, we need to know, do you have a license to sell the acid? Are you selling it to the industries? Is it for maybe commercial work? And if you're selling acid, there must be clear data on who is supposed to access acid. Where are you taking this acid? For which purpose? So that there is easy monitoring in case an acid occurs. For example, if we have identification whereby for you to come and buy acid, you need to use your ID, so that this information is left in the system, whereby in the case of any attack, and we know where you've come from, where you're taking the acid, it means in the case of an attack, it is easy to monitor who the perpetrator must be. But because we don't have that in place, people think it is easy to get away with it. And of course, the loopholes in the criminal justice system really cause a big problem.
Which kind of loopholes, particularly?
For example, my case, when I was attacked, I wasn't given the time to recover. I was just on my hospital bed just after the attack. My eyes, by that time, they could not see. They were covered in bandages. They put like a cups to control any light or anything. But the police officers came to me and said, if at all we put your perpetrator in line, the person who has poured acid on you, will you be able to identify the person?
It's impossible.
And of course, I say to them, I can't say. Do you expect me to use senses of smelling someone? I can't say. So at times, because for me, it took me a year to recover. Some people, it takes them more than that. But remember, in this case, you're the first eyewitness who has seen this person. It's like everything really is you. So at times it becomes hard for justice to really prevail. And it's not only that. At times there's enough evidence. But because mostly these I would say the victims or the survivors are women, so it becomes hard for them to have the justice they really need because of the social inequalities.
Yeah, which is the great difficulty. Unless we have to leave it there, but I do appreciate you coming in today. What's your message to people listening to your story this morning?
All I would really say, if you see a survivor, don't look at the scars. Instead, look beyond the scars. We are not the scars. We are not defined by what happened to us. We are beyond than this. Like for me, these scars tell a story. There is a story behind these scars. But I'm more strong now. I'm courageous. I'm willing to fight for those who are going through this. And of course, I'm trying to give a voice. So I normally tell people, at least give them the opportunities. Don't try to be pity. at least try to talk to me, understand what happened to me, what are those needs maybe I need, what their opportunities, if they're there, offer the opportunities. And of course, all we need is to be treated with dignity.
Absolutely. Vanessa, we appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for being with us. All right, let's turn to the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, it's a bank holiday weekend, so the weather will be unsettled. There are thunderstorms in the forecast, but at this stage, it's not clear where the storms will be. Showers will develop this morning. Some will be heavy and prolonged. There'll be the risk of hail and thunder, but some bright sunny spells too. The rain is going to be concentrated over northern England and Wales, more isolated elsewhere, with many north-western and south-eastern parts flying the Northern Isles, generally wet. It's going to be warm, though, but breezy in the south.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Now, UEFA is preparing to bring criminal proceedings against the boss of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, over his failed plan to sell off parts of the World Cup. Let's bring in our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, who's in Monaco. Rob.
Yes, UEFA really ratcheting things up in terms of threatening this legal action against Gianni Infantino in terms of whether they bring criminal proceedings in Switzerland, accusing the FIFA president of criminal mismanagement. UEFA have been holding meetings here in Monaco this week around the men's competition draws. I'm joined now by a senior official involved in those talks, the UEFA Vice President Laura McAllister. Thanks for joining us live on Sky News. As a result of these meetings, how much closer do you believe you are to trying to push Gianni Infantino out of FIFA?
I think the most important thing yesterday in our meeting, Rob, was to show a real unity and resilience for change. We've withdrawn the boycott, as you know, because all of the terms around withdrawing the FFE initiative and ensuring that that is never reintroduced in any shape or form have now been guaranteed. So we've won that battle, and that was very important because several European teams were about to play in the FIFA Women's Under-20s World Cup, and I felt very strongly, like many of my colleagues, that that had to happen. So the boycott worked up until this point, but we always thought this would be a longer process, and the most significant thing for us is to ensure change in the governance of world football so that we don't have initiatives like FFE reoccur in the future.
This is the scheme to try to sell shares in the World Cup to private investors, which was dropped by Gianni Infantino about a month ago. He is still holding on to power. We've seen Infantino around the world this week in the Caribbean, Vietnam and other places, still with support. Are you sensing the fact that there is maybe not the majority there to win an election against him?
Well, I think it's very early days, and there's no surprise, of course, that the FIFA president didn't resign. I don't think anyone expected that to happen. But from our point of view, I think we have all of the key stakeholders in football on the side of change. If you look at the fans, probably the most important people we can mention. If you talk about the players, if you talk about the clubs, the EFC, the European leagues, the national associations, we are united in wanting a regime change at FIFA level that will not just replace the president, but will actually change the culture of governance in world football. Because as I've said several times, we're custodians of the sport, and we interfere with the values of football at our peril because it doesn't belong to us. We are the people who are running football for now, and it's our duty to leave it in a better place than when we assumed authority.
Some of those smaller associations around the world seem appreciative of Gianni Infantino for the money he's helped to generate over the last decade. What is it particularly that Gianni Infantino has done wrong in your eyes in terms of that UEFA communique we saw yesterday talking about that the presidency of FIFA can't become the instrument of power for one person? A president is important as a figure. What needs to change, and what has gone wrong for you?
Well, first of all, Rob, that money doesn't belong to Gianni Infantino or FIFA. It belongs to the very federations who are receiving it. You know, the football is about the national associations that run football. The confederations are amalgamations of those, so that is their money. And FIFA sits on very hefty reserves that could be spent directly on football development. And you'll see in our statement yesterday, we talk about a fair, equitable distribution of the funds that are part of FIFA's reserves. But I think this is a catalogue of issues that we feel threaten the very heart of football. I mean, FFE was the most significant, of course, but this goes all the way back to Qatar and human rights. It goes back to the Balogun case in the World Cup, where political interference was shown on the pitch. It goes back to the FIFA Peace Prize. There has been a series of problems in terms of the leadership of global football. And I think from a UEFA standpoint, we feel this is the moment, this is the opportunity we have to leverage change that benefits not us actually in Europe, but global football and the most important stakeholders, the fans and the public.
And fans around the world will be wondering, will anything ever change?
Well, I hope it will. I think, you know, for those of us who have come in as reformers in football governance, you know, we haven't come in to just sit on our hands. You know, we're not afraid to speak up and to try and engineer change, because I think that will strengthen the game in the future. So I hope that we can convince them that this is a moment to leverage a really radical overhaul.
And very briefly, will it go down to the election in March, do you think, in terms of Infantino's future?
Well, let's see. I mean, a November candidate nomination is probably the first critical date.
Laura McAllister, thank you very much for joining us here on Sky News. The UEFA Vice President from Wales, former Wales international player, governance expert as well in Wales, and someone who's been at the heart of those meetings here this week in Monaco, as now Gianni Infantino has been subpoenaed to hand over all information relating to this World Cup sell-off venture that he abandoned, but he can now face legal consequence for in a potential court case down the line in Switzerland.
For that. All right, finally today, a new drama series looking at the world of boxing and the criminal underworld here in London has launched on Sky. Let's take a look.
Boxing is a criminal enterprise. Always has been and always will be.
Well, I'm very pleased to say we're joined by one of the stars of the show, Nicholas Pinnock. Nicholas, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for being with us. We saw a bit of it there. Just give us a précis as to what this series is about.
It's a crime drama with a family called the Marshall family, and it's about revenge. Duke is a boxer who my character Kingsley has in his camp, and events happen, and years down the line, Duke wants to take revenge on Kingsley.
Stuff happens. I watched the first episode last night, and it is very entertaining. It ticks along, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And it's from executive producer 50 Cent.
That's correct.
Coach Jackson, to those who don't know what he has done since sort of stopping doing the music sort of full time, talk us through like the way that he is now making television.
He's become a TV mogul. He's had the whole Power series. I did a show for him years ago called For Life, and this is the second time working for him now with Fightland. So he's doing really great things in TV and film.
And how is the working relationship with him? Is he very involved? I mean, I know he does the soundtrack for this, doesn't he? Or at least the opening track.
He's very involved. He's very hands-on, very collaborative. He's there when you need him to be.
Watching the first episode, it's nearly an all-black cast. How important is it that it's sort of representative of black people in the making of the show?
Honestly, I don't think it is. It's just it's a drama. It's a family drama. There's nothing about colour culture in there. That's not the reason the drama is set. It just happens to be these people, and that's what I really love about it. That it isn't colour conscious. They're not there because of their colour. They're just there because they're people.
And that is a different thing. I mean,
absolutely.
We haven't sort of had those kind of dramas that just portray families.
No, because we're the only people on the planet that can't be people first. We have to have the identity of our colour before we are allowed to be people. But so a drama like this is amazing because these are just people in this area, in this environment. This is this family, and nothing about their colour is really mentioned.
How important is it? Because I must get to the sort of the meats of some of this. How important is a representation of black people on screen, do you think, in this day and age? I mean, you'll know this summer we've come through this Jason Arde affair, which has been traumatic to many people in the community, not least his family. And it's raised issues around black representation, black excellence, all that sort of thing. How important is that we address those issues and talk about them openly?
Listen, I think they're important. I think sometimes we place a bit too much importance on them, and so it's a difficult subject. It's a difficult subject. I think representation for everybody is important, and I know the history of our people and how it seems to add importance because of the history of the world. But at some point, we have to really look at it in a much broader spectrum than just a focused lens.
Do you think it's important then that you become sort of unburdened by some of those pressures that perhaps were there before?
The burden's always going to be there, but where I think we can unburden ourselves, I think we should.
All right, so how many episodes have we got to go? I think the 3 have dropped so far.
3 have dropped so far.
What can we expect?
Then there's another 5.
And then season 2,
let's
3?
hope so, yeah.
I mean, it does have that sense that I can already see from the first episode there are storylines that can come off in all sorts of directions.
So many storylines. And just when you think you know what's going to happen or you know where it's going, it can completely shift.
OK. So watch it, enjoy it. Maybe not with the kids, because it's adult. It's an adult show.
Definitely not with the kids.
It's an adult show, not for this time. But because we appreciate you and appreciate the work, man. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I look forward to watching the next couple of episodes this week. Thank you very much for being with us. All right, that's all from the team here on Mornings. Very pleased to say Leah will be up next with your news headlines, the very latest from Nepal, and of course from Oslo on the death of King Harold.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.